companies, big, small, business leaders, practitioners, all coming together. We just wanted everyone to have a place where we could bring everyone together, learn from each other how people are really using AI to grow their revenue in sales, marketing, and in general go to market. So welcome everybody in. We're excited to have you here. We'll get into it, and I'm going to walk you through what's going to happen today, how things work, some resources available to you, and give you the lay of the land. And with that, let's just start going through everything. All right. So first, big thank you to our sponsors. First, VIB. If you are a demand gen marketer and you don't know about VIB, you need to go check them out. They've got a lot of great tools and resources that can help you hit your number. There's plenty of links on AIRevenueSummit.com. They'll take you back over there. Go get a demo from them, see what's going on, see how they can help you. Also, Silicon Slope Summit. That's happening September 27th to 28th. Usually have over 20,000 people there in the Delta Center. And for 2 days, learning from business leaders, networking, great place if you're in the tech space to come get connected. If you've been wanting to get more involved with the Utah community, basically everybody from Utah goes up there, and then they've got people from all over the world coming in as well. Some of the speakers, just to name a few that they have, they've got the one and only Tony Robbins is going to be speaking. Gary Vee is also going to be speaking. Jesse Itzler, one of my favorite authors, is going to be speaking. I think they've got over 50 speakers lined up over the 2 days. Awesome event. Go check it out. And it's going to be great. So we have over 30 speakers for you today. Some of them are live, some are pre-recorded. But just to give you a sense of who you're going to be hearing from, some of the companies represented, Sendoso, Gong, Demandbase, Chronologic, ourselves here at Signals, Reggie AI, Heinz Marketing, Customer, Lavender. We really tried to bring together some companies that are doing some great things with AI, and also just people who are using tools to share with you how they are actually making their job easier, being more effective, and winning new business using AI. So I'm going to give you, first, we got 2 tracks as we go through this. So one is our live track, which you're on. If you're watching this is where it's going to be all day. Then we also release pre-recorded sessions every hour starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So for the live track, you're going to have myself. We're going to have our keynote with Dave Elkington. Then you're going to hear from Katie from Sendoso. You're going to see myself again, but really what you're going to want to hear from is John Miller. He's going to be sharing how his team is using AI and how Demandbase is using AI. Matt Heinz from Heinz Marketing, Ryan Staley from Whaleboss, Matt Millen from Reggie AI, and I are going to have a great conversation about how they're using AI. And then we're going to wrap it up with Scott Logan and James Gilbert on the live side of things. So you can watch the live sessions here on AIRevenueSummit.com. It'll also be live on LinkedIn. If you go to the AI Revenue Summit 2023 event page on LinkedIn, you'll be able to access that. And then also on YouTube, you can get all the live stuff on YouTube. Now, the pre-recorded, that is not available on YouTube and LinkedIn. You got to be here on AIRevenueSummit.com. And yes, before you ask, it will be available after the event as well. And then we'll keep it up here for a week or two. Then we move everything over to getsignals.ai. If you still want to find that or any of our previous events, just go to getsignals.ai and then to the events section. We've hosted the Demandbase for a few years, or not Demandbase, the Demand Gen Summit for a few years. And then also our RevTech Summits are all up there. And go in, take a look at those. A lot of great material. So at 10 a.m., you're going to be able to hear from Ryan and Maria, and they are part of our AI for Sales track. So anything that's kind of this pink, red color, that's AI specifically for sales. Then Mariah and Katie, and anything that's that purple you see on the button there for them, that's going to be AI for marketing. And then you'll have Will from Lavender, and then Steve, Dan, and Jordan are going to be they have a great conversation for you. And that's more general, just go to market. And then Udi and Dan as well are in that go to market track. At 11 a.m. Pacific, you'll be able to access Brian's presentation, Nadia, Nishit and Ben, Gabe Larson from Customer, and Sarah. All great presentations. Take the time, go to watch them. You can watch them later as well. They'll be up there. And then at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 Eastern, you'll be able to access these presentations from Daniel, Lauren, Martin, Somya, and Jeff. And with that, we're going to hop into our awards. So this is the most votes we've ever had for one of our awards at any of the summits that we've hosted over the years. So we had over 3,500 people vote. Anyone who registered for the event, you didn't even have to register. You could come in, you could vote. Great to see everyone getting involved. We had the most people nominated we've ever had, with over 60 people nominated. So first, want to give congratulations to everyone that was nominated. These were all nominated by your peers. It was open nominations, and then voting just by your peers. So here you go. I'm going to recognize the top 5 vote getters in each of our 4 categories. So our first category was thought leaders. So who are the people that you're paying attention to learning how to use AI? And so I'm going to recognize these guys. So we have Ryan from Whale Boss, Amara Preet from Humanic AI, Zaid, Debanjan from Data Robot, and Sonia from CurioHow. And if I got your name wrong, I really apologize. Message me, let me know how to say it right, and we will right any wrongs. Okay, for our AI Strategist Award category, so we have Katie from AI in Business, Daniel from Kronos, Morgan from AMP, and Christopher from Channel 99, and Robert from Jobski. All right, and then for our AI engineers, who's actually like making this stuff happen in the background so the rest of us can use it, we've got Christopher from Customer, Pete from Chronologic, Eric from Growth Engine, Jan from Meta, and Jordan from Blueprint. All right, and our last category, AI practitioners. So who's actually taking all these great tools and making them work for them and for their organization? So we have Zoya from Gong, Shane from Humanic AI, Lewis from Demandbase, Sean from Gong, and Nadia from Digital Transformation Leaders. Congratulations to all of you guys for winning. Big round of applause. Really excited for this and to host this again next year. Okay, we do have some stuff for you. We got, some digital swag, some resources. So before you leave, these are all available on AIRevenueSummit.com. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, just head over there. You can download all of these. So we've got 4 different tools for you, and I'm just going to run you through these before we get into our keynote. So the first one is our ChatGPT cheat sheet. So this is for anybody that's wanting to just have a quick reference. How do I start using ChatGPT to make my life easier, to be more effective with my job? We've got some great prompts in there, and just, hey, how do I effectively use it to get my job done? Then we've got our Mastering Influence, a guide for sales and marketing leaders. This is going to be for anyone that's a sales and marketing leader. How do you use ChatGPT or a similar tool to help you with your messaging and go to market, especially your go to market messaging? The next thing is our strategic management prompts. So this is really for anyone that's in a management position that's looking to use a tool like Baird or ChatGPT to help make their life easier, to be more effective. This has got some good prompts in there for you and some best practices. And the last one is social media, so that we can promote, whether it's ourselves or our company, make getting those great LinkedIn posts easier for you. And how do you do that? We've got some great prompts in there to help you get started if you haven't started using that. All right, enough from me. Let's get it over to Dave Elkington. So if you don't know about Dave, Dave is generally a fun guy, good-looking dude as well. He's our chairman here at Signals, and also was the founder and CEO at InsideSales.com for about 15 years. If you don't know what Inside Sales was doing with AI years ago, they were using AI to help sales professionals get a hold of people at the right time and get a hold of the right person. And so Dave is going to be going through his 3-step process for really implementing and using AI with some real world examples and how you can start doing that as a sales and marketing leader. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and we're excited to hear what Dave's got for us.
Welcome to the AI Revenue Summit. My name is Pete Ketchum, CMO here at Signals. The event is being hosted by Signals, and to also mention our sponsors with VIB and Silicon Slopes. With that said, this is the first time that we are running this type of event, AI Revenue Summit. We do run quarterly events, as many of you have probably participated in, but I will say this is edging to be, if not our most well-attended. Welcome to the AI Revenue Summit. My name is Pete Ketchum, CMO here at Signals. The event is being hosted by Signals, and to also mention our sponsors with VIB and Silicon Slopes. With that said, this is the first time that we are running this type of event, AI Revenue Summit. We do run quarterly events, as many of you have probably participated in, but I will say this is edging to be, if not our most well-attended. Welcome to the AI Revenue Summit.
So typical machine learning, we'll get into this a little bit. It's actually kind of interesting. It's been around forever, right? Like machine learning is well over 50 years old. And the math has evolved, but a lot of the core algorithms, the core math that machine learning is based on has been around, since the 80s, like things like neural nets. A lot of these have been around, but what's happened is they've evolved and they've been improved. And there's algorithms that, optimize getting data in or doing it on smaller, computers. There's just a lot of optimization that's been done around it. Now, generative AI, and that's kind of why candidly, that's probably why we're talking, is machine learning used to generate content. So it's based off of a large language model, in particular, ChatGPT is a large language model. And basically what it does is way simpler than I think everybody's made out of it. And my guess is many of the attendees today, the listeners, know this. So I apologize for some of the simplicity of what I'm going to share. But basically what a generative AI algorithm does is it looks at past examples of content, and think content more broadly, not just words, but it could be images, it could be songs, it could be audio, it could be behaviors, anything that you can interpret content from the past. It says, okay, these are the patterns for this series or this set of data. Based off of this series of content or this set of content, and these instructions, what's the most likely next set of content to come out? And what's interesting is the principle behind it is it tokenizes it. And what that really means is it takes some piece of content and says, I don't care what actually is in the content. I'm just looking at the sequence when this token shows up and then this next token shows up. What's most commonly the very next token to come up? And it's looking at that en masse. That's what generative AI does. So it generates content. Now, what's super interesting about that for all of the people who are listening today is as sales, marketing, and revenue leaders and representatives, our key role in the market is to actually do two things, in my opinion. Number one, generate relationships with people, like help people, customers, potential buyers who want to understand more about what we do and what we're selling. They want to understand this. All right, our goal is to develop relationships so they can talk to us. And we need to also then generate content so they can learn about us and what we sell and what our companies do. So generative AI should be the Shangri-La for all revenue related individuals. And I think the reason there's so many attendees on today's summit is I think we all intuitively know that. And we're seeing little use cases of it. But I think, today out of the other speakers and hopefully out of today's conversation, I think we'll see that. I think there's a lot that's happening right now.
Great. And so, you mentioned, hey, this has been around for a while, right? Some of the generative AI, the machine learning. So what kind of insight can you give us as to why have we hit such an AI revolution over the past 8-10 months or so that's got everybody into the tools and the plugins and GPT and so forth?
Yeah, so now it's a softball, right? So it's an interesting question, but I've not heard anyone really describe or think about it the way that we're, I think, going to talk about it right now. Machine learning, and I studied machine learning in my master's program. And so machine learning is typically before what happened when OpenAI introduced, ChatGPT last November, nearly a year ago, to use a machine learning algorithm is kind of intensive, right? So you have data scientists, you have machine learning software engineers, you've got, it's the whole payload of people who have to figure this out. And there's really three key things. You have to do kind of the preparation. It's called data engineering or data preparation. And there's data scientists who this is what they do. And in short, what they do is they get all of this data and they coerce it. They manipulate the data in a way that can be consumed by an algorithm. Then you have the middle section, which is tuning that algorithm, which is like, okay, it's not quite what I thought. Let's think about tuning a car. You buy a car, you want to really optimize it. You got to think about, okay, how much oxygen, how much fuel, what's the timing? Like there's things that you do to tune a vehicle. Well, you tune a machine learning algorithm. And then you take the outcome of that and you have to interpret that and synthesize it, back to improve your results. What happened a year ago, and look, everybody who's been, in listening at all knows that, data science has been this big boom for the last 10 years. And, there's all kinds of, new programs at universities where data science, scientists are getting trained. But what happened a year ago was the consumerization of AI. And what I mean by that is, as of November last year, it doesn't take a degree in machine learning. It doesn't take a degree in computer science. It doesn't take a degree in data science. It doesn't take a degree in statistics to do those three things. So any consumer, so you went from, call it hundreds of thousands to now billions of people have the ability to become data scientists. That's what happened a year ago. And if you think about ChatGPT, that's exactly what we're doing. We're getting data. We have some problem or some question we want an answer to. We have to go get the background information. We then put it in ChatGPT or Bard or whatever generative AI that we care about. We then get an answer and we're like, okay, that's not quite what I meant. And then we tune the algorithm. We're like, oh, really? So if we're asking, GPT, write me a sonnet. Okay, because we all did that. Or, write me a poem. Like, because when it first came out, we're like, oh, this is really, right. What can this thing do? So we're like, okay, write me a sonnet. We're like, okay, cool. No, I actually don't want a sonnet. I want a limerick. And I want it in the form, I want you to use cat language. And it's like, okay, I'm going to write a cat language limerick for you. Now, about half of the writers are like, or listeners right now are like, I'm going to go try that right now. And it actually does that kind of crazy stuff. And so you tune the algorithm. So you first get all the data. You say, okay, I want a limerick. I want it to be this long. I want it to be blah, 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 blah. It gives you an outcome and you're like, nope, this is what I really meant. So you go through this iterative process of tuning and then you get the results and you're like, okay, now I'm going to interpret this and I'm going to go put it in this, this card that I'm going to send off to my sweetheart who loves cat language, limericks.
Of course.
Now, but what happened a year ago was we no longer require deep expertise, mathematical expertise to become a data scientist or a machine learning expert. Literally anybody who has the ability to interact with a prompt has the ability to become a data scientist. It's stunning. Like yeah. I'm telling you, we just made a transition that I think will change. In fact, if you think about, in my opinion, where we're at in this life cycle of machine learning and AI, we're not even in the first. What is it in baseball? Like the first inning, right? Yeah. We're just sitting down in the ballpark. We just got our peanuts and our popcorn, and we're like, okay, this is going to be a good game. Like that's where we're at in the evolution of what I believe is going to happen as a result of generative AI and the consumerization of AI.
So then, when we were talking a little before this and earlier this week, we ran across some interesting statistics, right? We looked a little bit into different areas, different studies that have been done, Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, MIT, and so forth. And just to kind of show the scope for the audience, like, okay, yeah, we all know it's big, but really how big? Do we really understand how big it is? Here's some interesting facts to kind of pull out, right? So 70% of PhD holders in AI now work in the private industry. That's up 20% from 2 decades ago, and that's coming from MIT. Now, Stanford found that the U.S. government spending on AI contracts reached $3.3 billion last year, 2022. Now that's up $2.7 billion. I mean, so how much of 1,000% up is that, right? Yeah, you're going to say something like that.
Yeah, no, it's the point of this is everybody is seeing this and is shifting just paradigmatically into this. And the government's doing it, and they're the laggards, right? If the government's doing it, they're so far behind everybody that this is a big thing. I mean, you have a few other stats. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. So we got overall. This was really interesting. This comes from Goldman Sachs research. Generative AI advancements could boost global GDP by 7%, is what they're estimating, around $7 trillion, and raise productivity growth by 1.5% over the next decade. So those are kind of numbers that we haven't seen in that time frame. And then another kind of like interesting insight as to the scope of what went into these kind of programs is McKinsey released some interesting information on ChatGPT specifically, and saying that it took around 45 terabytes of text data. And what that attributes to being is about 1 million feet of bookshelf space, or a quarter of the entire Library of Congress. So, I mean, when we think about, I want to do this next tool, or I want to build this into the software, and like, I'm going to do our own thing. You're like, hold on a second. What's available to us? How do we leverage what's already out there, and using good practices to include AI so that we're not making some of these mistakes that we are earlier. Maybe we put in the poem, we're like, oh, well, that was fun, and then go back to our day. Like, there's a lot that's been put into this. There's a lot coming from it, and there's more to leverage, so we can drive that revenue and other advantages.
So there's an interesting thing you bring up, kind of the scale and what's about to happen in the market. And one thing I don't think everybody necessarily realizes, but that's probably not true. I think most people get it. They just don't understand the scale and the scope. But it feels to me like, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, has said things like, this is the new iPhone moment. I think it's bigger than that, right? Like, I think, and, of course, he has a lot to gain from it because it's his GPUs, his processors that are driving all the AI. So, of course, he wants to make sure that everybody knows how big it is and buys more of his GPUs. But I think what's happened is, just as a transition happened in the late 1800s in the Industrial Revolution, where people went from kind of this artisan approach to manufacturing, where they would go build one thing at a time, and it was beautiful, but it was very slow. Someone would sit down and handcraft a chair, or they'd handcraft, a rifle, or they'd handcraft a whatever. And then through the Industrial Revolution, we saw, lots of machinery, emerge, automation, where the productivity scale just went, wildly higher. Yet there was, you have to know, there were some people there who were saying, these, fandangled machinery, like I'm going to stick, doggone it, I'm going to stick with, my artisan approach. And look, there probably is room for some of those folks, but I would wager most of the people who rejected kind of that disruption to the way they did business were out of business, fairly quickly. I think we're back in that very same moment. So, I think a lot of people who are attending today either intuitively or explicitly understand this is a similar moment. You don't really have an option to ignore this. In fact, I think BCG in their study, this is a study done literally just 2 months ago, which everything is moving so quickly, basically said 81% of CMOs think, that's not, it's somewhere in here. There's a stat that basically says, inaction is not an option. Literally, I'm kind of scrolling through. Everybody has to be involved in this. So the point is, if you're not experimenting, if you're not doing something, there's a very, very high likelihood that you're going to be disrupted. Because again, that same shift during the Industrial Revolution, we're in this disruption of kind of the consumer AI revolution. Like we're right in the middle of it, or at the beginning of it. And I think there's opportunity for winners and losers right now.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful. I mean, because as we're talking about, what does this mean, right? What does this mean for the B2B space? We kind of got into, well, what are some of the misconceptions that are happening around in B2B or in the business world? Because like you said, you have that consumerization now. It's available to everybody. Anybody can do this, but are we in the right mindset of doing it to leverage that information? Are we doing the steps kind of you talked about earlier, doing the prepping, tuning, interpreting some of the results? Are we in the right mindset to do that? So what are some of those misconceptions that you're seeing out there, and how do we kind of move around those?
Yeah, so you just kind of brought up, and it's a paradigm that I think we need to really embrace, which is just like a educated, university trained data scientist thinks about machine learning in these 3 steps, where it's like, okay, number 1, we have to do the data preparation. Number 2, we have to do the tuning, and then we have to do kind of the analysis and potentially iteration on that whole process. This consumerized AI, or this generative AI, is the same thing. So I think it is not a catch. There's not one easy way to do this. It's not like you can say, oh, go solve this, go solve all my problems. It feels as though it's that mature, but it's actually not. And I'll give you an example. In the spring, I'm as you'd hope and you'd expect, I'm an early adopter of this stuff. So I was like, I think it was probably the first day you could go buy the premium account with OpenAI. Of course, I went and paid the $20 a month and did it. And my Sonnet's got that much better. But it was interesting. I sit on the board and involved with several companies, one of which is the sponsor company, the Signals, and they had just finished a survey. They had the raw survey results, and I reached out to Pete and the team and said, give me the results. I'm going to go, because every time they do a summit like this or an event like this, they typically do a survey, and somebody goes and gets the results, hires a data scientist to go run, or a statistician. They run the analysis on the results. They find correlation. They write it up and they say, hey, here's what's based off of what people have just said. Here's what's happening in the market, in the industry. And I just thought, we don't need it anymore. GPT can do this whole thing. So I got all the results. I copied and pasted. I think it was a SurveyMonkey outcome, and put it in there. And I went through that, got the data already, got it in there, had to do it in some different blocks because it was quite a bit. And that process, so data prep, number 1. Number 2, I was like, okay, great. Let's let's tune this thing because it was not right at first. I'm like, oh no, that's not quite what I'm asking. And then I did it again. I probably spent 2 hours trialing and error, and I was learning. And then finally, I was like, I got it. Like I did the analysis. Like this looks great. And my 19-year-old smart aleck boy walks behind me and said, "Oh, Dad, like GPT can't run statistics right now. Like it's hallucinating. It's making up results to try and give you an answer because you keep pushing for an answer. It just wants to give you an answer. It did." And he's like, "Just go double check the math." And so I pull out my calculator. I'm like, oh crap, this is totally wrong. It looked right, but it's not. None of the math was right. And so I think there's this perception that it's potentially more mature. Now, what's interesting is in prep for this, I'd asked you, Pete, to go run the exact same analysis again using plugins that, in fact, like Wolfram Alpha, which if you're not using OpenAI with Wolfram Alpha to do the analytical analysis, that's a quick, easy win that you're going to get out of today. And I said, okay, go use Wolfram Alpha, go use some of these other plugins and tools that have now enhanced OpenAI's capabilities, and let's see how it works. Today, this is like 4 months later or something like that. And share what you found.
Yeah. So I guess kind of stepping back just a smidge in the process there for me was we kind of talked a little bit more about that prepping, tuning. We're going to analyze the data and so forth. And when I got in there, I used the Wolfram Alpha plugin, got the data in there and said, hey, I need this to be interpreted. Got the PDF into GPT to interpret it. And once that happened, it literally just gave me the statistics from the survey, which is what you can already read from the survey. I was like, well, that's not helpful at all. And so kind of not being familiar with that use case within GPT, I went ahead and just asked, I said, okay, how do I use Wolfram Alpha appropriately to be able to translate a survey and get an analysis done from it? And it gave me a lot of suggestions from there. And so then I realized, okay, I was thinking a prep level here. What I need to do is my prep level, a whole level higher. So I went through, did the prep, and by prepping, I'm just saying, hey, this is the kind of analysis I'm running. This is what it's from. These were the survey takers. This is the event that it was around. These are the analysis concepts that we're looking for. These are the learnings we're looking for. And just kept going into the nitty gritty of like what we're looking for and kind of building almost like the GPT data analyst for the specific request, right? Like GPT could do it all. I just was so vague that it just gave me a vague response. And so once I kind of told the chat conversation within this algorithm, the bot, saying, okay, this is who you are. This is who this information is coming from. Now run it. It came back with spectacular results. I mean, it was fine-tuned enough to where I would say the accuracy level is right there, 90%. Yeah, you could export it and then kind of do the finishing touches on it. But that's kind of the result of it, and it shocked me from the results.
And so to answer your question, I think the misperception is, one, this thing's changing like weekly, even daily in some cases. So they're adding features, plugins are getting approved and getting added in there. There's you have Bard that is improving and adding capabilities. There's more traditional vendors like Salesforce.com or 6sense or Clary. There's a whole bunch of companies who have been doing more traditional AI, are also integrating generative AI, whether it's Bard or GPT or Amazon or whoever's providing these tools. So the market is changing at this accelerated rate. So like minimally, you should be talking to your peers. You should be benchmarking, talking to other people, saying, what are you finding that's working? You should be attending events like this. Like you've got to be super adaptive. Like the idea of like having an annual strategy plan on how to use AI is not valid. That's kind of lesson number one. Lesson number two, you need to not try and rely on AI to do too much. I mean, the first thing I did is I gave it all the results and say, run the analysis and then write up the summary of the analysis. And it was just, it was, I think my incapability, my inadequacies of understanding its inability to run statistical analyses at the time, and then do multi-step things. I probably was not a good enough prompt engineer to do that. And so the other thing, kind of number two, is stick to very discrete, simple problems. And then I would say the third thing, and this comes out of the BCG study, which we'll make the link available. And they've got kind of in response to this, inaction is not an option premise. They basically have 4 steps that every organization should do. So number 1 is just start experimenting. And I'll give you an example of that. But let me hit all of these things. Number 2, find game-changing outcomes. So play with things, find things that work, find ones that really make an impact to your company, your role, your department. So find these game-changing outcomes. Then number 3, at that point, then establish an enterprise-wide model. And then finally, 4th, then implement guidelines, kind of responsibility guidelines, because it's something we'll maybe talk about if we have time today. But 81% of CMOs believe there's a need, and we'll see regulation of generative AI, meaning there's ways to use it effectively and appropriately, and there's ways that you shouldn't be using it, and it's probably inappropriate. And so again, if we have some time, we'll talk more about that. But let me give you an example of that experimentation that companies should be doing right now. So as I was, preparing to speak with everybody today, I went and interviewed, dozens of CMOs, CROs, people, in multiple industries to see what's real, because there's so much hype. So I'm like, okay, what's real? What are you using? What are you not using? And hopefully it's a consolation to everybody. What I found was everybody is in the ideation stage. Everybody is either pre-experimentation, curious, or they're just in the early stage of experimentation, trying things out. It's way earlier than I think the media would suggest we're at from a development stage. So if you're not that far down your path, nobody is, from what I could find. There's a few people who are further, but most people are still in like hey, what do we do? Pragmatically, I think everyone's like, boy, we're behind it. I think people are trying to integrate it into their products if they have technology companies, but Pete, it's super early. And so one of my favorite interviews I had with somebody was, I sit on several company boards, one of which just recently we were at a lunch with with all of the investors, and one of the investors, a private equity firm, shared a story as I was kind of questioning people of where they're at in their generative AI journey. And the managing partner who was it was actually a lunch, who was at the lunch with us, shared he knew that there was a need to do something. So he decided to create a competition amongst his entire firm. So he first, I think, brought somebody in to do a training so everybody understood the basic principles of what AI and generative AI is. I mean, and he's including like janitors, secretaries, assistants, managing partners, investment partners, principals, think in a private equity firm, the entire stack, the entire employee base. Then what he did is he created a competition, and he said, I want everybody in the firm to find one key problem that they face every week in their job. So something that they do over and over. It's like, oh, I've got to solve this problem. And then he created, again, this competition and said, with awards, I mean, the works, and said, whoever can come up with the most elegant generative AI solution gets these specific awards. So 2 examples that really I think would be helpful for me was one of the secretaries. The problem she chose to try and address was every week, several times a week, there will be a meeting where she's tasked with getting lunch for all of the participants of the meeting. And it could be, 3 people, it could be 30 people, it could be these very large lunches. And the problem she was faced with was there's preferences and there's allergies, and, someone may be pregnant and has limitations, and someone may have, you can imagine, and it seems like a trivial task, but getting everybody happy in a lunch is, within a budget and within a time frame is actually surprisingly difficult. So what she did is she collected all that information. So step 1, she did all the, the data preparation, the feature engineering, all of that kind of thing. She got all of the data and got it in a document. She then used that, entered it into ChatGPT and said, okay, I need a lunch that accommodates all of these constraints and limitations and needs and requirements, and these are the people, and here's where we've eaten in the past. You can imagine all of these different constraints she put in here, and said, give me some recommendations for each of the individuals that are going to be at this lunch from a single restaurant, and these are food preferences, and you name it. And it did, and it came back with some options. And I think she'd asked, give me 3 different restaurant options using plugins. And I don't remember, I don't think he shared what plugin options, she was using, but using options of restaurants that could accommodate these needs in the region that could then deliver within the time frame. And then she used another plugin or another generative AI app that then actually integrated, I believe, and made the order and had the orders delivered using, something like Uber Eats or
DoorDash.
DoorDash or some delivery service. So I mean, to me, I was like, that's a brilliant woman. That's somebody, in this case, he shared like, man, she just saved, dozens of hours a month off of her work. Now, the second one from the same lunch was one of the partners, one of the investment partners, and he gets dozens of pitch decks, PowerPoints, and PDFs of companies who want to raise money from this private equity firm. In this case, and this takes him hours a week to go and get these, process these, evaluate the companies, reach out, pardon me, and collect all of the data. So he similarly wrote an algorithm that said, this is first he did all the feature engineering, said, this is all the data we need from these things like, what's the revenue growth, what's the industry, what's the region they're in, who are the employees, how many employees. You can imagine all the things that a venture firm or a private equity firm would want to know about a firm before they would consider investigating whether they should do an investment. So he collected all of those questions, as a prompt engineer, and said, okay, I need all of this information. And so he used one of the plugins that allowed them to consume, the PowerPoint or consume the PDF, collected all that information, then through another integration, generated a document and the raw data, uploaded that into Salesforce.com, their CRM, that then allowed him at the end of the week to say, okay, show me all the companies that sent us a pitch or some pitch deck or pitch, PDF this week, and show me all of them within this range that we would potentially invest in with this industry and so forth. And so it saved him just like, even within a week, a dozen plus hours, I guess, a significant amount of his work week. And so I think the key that companies need to be thinking about are specific discrete problems, and then begin experimenting with these and empower your entire organization to do these and take the time to make these kind of experiments.
Yeah, I love that. When you were sharing these examples, it makes me think a little bit of when you're plugging in some of these sequences or workflows into Zapier or Make.com. They kind of force you to go through a step and say, okay, first connect your Google Mail, and then put it into Google Docs and so forth. And what it does is at each step it says, okay, this is connected. Is everything looking right? And yes or no, and you make those changes. And then it runs a test to make sure each section's working before it moves on to the next thing. And so it kind of like going back to the example we talked about from the study, from the survey, and then with the two examples here, each and every time it's kind of like, hey, do a little bit, test it out, see if that worked. And then you can kind of build on top of it rather than trying to take a massive scope project and be like, okay, I did it, now test it. I go, it doesn't work. All right. Either you waste a lot of time or it's kind of discourage future usage. I think in that case, that's going to be critical when we're implementing AI technologies, whether it's something simple or more, a purchase tool that's more expensive. You want to scale it appropriately.
And they went through, as this managing partner described it to me, that very same process. So it's like, okay, I get the data or I get the information that I can ask a reasonable question that it can answer and give me, the kind of results I want. Then I tune it. I got to okay, you're going to be wrong. And then I get the data and I kind of say, okay, is this really what I meant? So that 3-step process was exactly what they went through. So as people think about how do we use this in revenue generating opportunities, like they need to, they shouldn't expect it to work the first time. This is an iterative experimental process. So again, I want to kind of reiterate what BCG said. They said, number one, start experimenting. And that's an amazing example. Create a competition. Everybody pick a problem or a method to, or something they want to solve. Once they've done that, find the ones that are the game-changing outcomes. And then once they get those, establish an enterprise-wide model that everybody can then go leverage and use. And then from that, put guidelines around it. But they talk about, don't do the guidelines too quickly because it'll limit the ideation and the experimentation phase.
Yeah, love it. You know, and it's always on our mind, like working as we're going through marketing and stages. You've got your ABM processes, your demand gen, and it's similar. It's kind of the similar rules, right? There's no exception. You don't just build a whole program and then move on. So, well, so we talked a little bit about driving the revenue. If we're going to do it, you know, do it in small steps. But would you have anything else to add to it when we're saying, hey, businesses to leverage AI to drive more revenue? What should we be thinking about? What areas, if, like you said, you talked to many people, they're doing nothing, still in the ideation phase. Where should it start? Where should the processes start?
Yeah. So the obvious place that people, and I'm not going to surprise anybody, but the content creation is the easiest and obvious way. And if you think about it as a sales rep or a marketer, that's what we do. We generate content. So that could be blogs, that could be ad content. It could be email content. It could be email headers. It could be PowerPoints that we provide to sell, to potential prospects and buyers. This could be proposals. This could be filtering. So think about, and again, in that same, I'm a little bit, redundant on this, but that same BCG study kind of shared the number one generative AI test that people have been making is personalization. So 67% of the CMOs, and they surveyed, I think, 200 CMOs, 67% of those said they've been using and experimenting with generative AI to kind of accommodate personalization. And so, I mean, this could be all the way from, think about personalization in your web content or your email content, or create personalized shopping experiences, or goals. I mean, there's all kinds of personalization, even from a sales rep perspective. People are using it for personalizing emails as they're sending them out to prospects. So rather than sending template emails, so personalization is by far and wide the most experimented area that people are both trying and seem to be seeing success. The second one is insight generation. So trying to, just like we were doing with the survey, try and get insights out of information. And that could be behavioral information we're getting from buyers as they're on our website. And that's something Signals, the company, has just announced. I think Billy just announced today that they're using generative AI to take all of the behavior in the sales process. So that could be, they're coming in and they're clicking on specific ad types. It's behavior on a website. So, how long they're on a website, how often they come back, the frequency, how many, think account-based signals, where they're basically looking at the signals of that people are giving, the digital signals, the digital demeanor and behavior. They're using generative AI, saying, okay, we're taking the content of the behavior and we're predicting the likely future behavior, so they can determine the likelihood that somebody becomes an MQL or an SQL or even a customer. So, insight generation was the second thing they highlighted where people are experimenting. And again, I think Signals, the host of the company, is seeing some interesting early success on that. Content generation was the third one at 49%. So nearly 50% of people are using it for content generation. And then things like market segmentation or social listening. And they're like I said, we'll provide the link to the full, and it's worth digging in. But anywhere we're generating content, again, as a sales rep, you're sending emails, you're leaving voicemails, you are sending proposals, you're sending presentations, you're orchestrating, your presentation. I mean, something as simple as, and I'm hearing little bits of experimentation of all of this. If I'm going to do a demo for a specific prospect who's in the healthcare industry for my solution or some kind of solution presentation, I can put the content, the personalization information of this specific prospect. I can put the features of our product, and it can actually give me a script or at least a bullet sequence of the kinds of things that would likely be more interesting to the prospect in my presentation. So like that's the kind of stuff. In fact, you've told me one, before this, that you use to generate a marketing video. I think it'd be super helpful for people to hear what you did with this.
Yeah. So we were building a video out, and we wanted to say, okay, what can we do with the tools that are out there? And
It's
so
like a 2-minute video, right? It was like a 2-minute website marketing video.
Exactly. And it was kind of an add-on. So it really wasn't, we didn't have time built in for it as well. So it was like, okay, how do we kind of scrape this together and get it done, but get done right? So what we ended up doing was building it into a AI generative model. And we said, okay, this is the mission statement. This is who the audience is, just kind of spec'd all that stuff out and gave the background and the preparation. And we said, okay, we're looking for a 2-minute video. Let's generate enough content and just kind of see what the AI tool put out. And when it did,
script, right? This was a script. It wrote a 2-minute script based off of all of your information.
That's right. Yeah. So it was really impressive. Like I know I tweaked it, but it was very little. I was like, wow, like this is maybe a better job than I do after a couple of days. So So it went through there, and then the next step was, okay, well, now I need a voiceover for it. So we looked for an AI tool that would do some voiceovers. So I went through a couple tools, kind of did some trials through there. There's a lot of selection of different voices, and I was able to also kind of match up, saying, hey, this is the pace that I want. This is kind of the tone, the feel that I want it to come out to, based on who the audience is going to be listening to this ad, right, the video. And so I was able to do all of that. And then I think I'll mention here as well is, like, we ended up not being able to prepare it the way I wanted it to, with the tools, without having to, purchase a large contract or an annual program there. So what we ended up doing was then just going through another organization, like an offshore company that was able to give us
Upwork, right? It was like an Upwork actor or something like that.
Yeah, and so they were able to do it, and it wasn't a big deal. It was pretty low cost, and still able to get it done. And we got the video created. Some of the AI was used for the imagery, video creation, and then of course the alignment of everything. So a lot of AI was used in it, and the biggest takeaway for me is that we got to be able to have the tools that allow us to do the proper prep work. So maybe if I had subscribed and done the annual subscription for one of the voiceovers, I would have been able to do all the prep I wanted to, right? But if the tool that you're looking at, or that you're working on or building, if it doesn't allow you to match your process for your organization or for your department into the AI program, it's kind of, you got to be able to compensate for that in some manner. And if not, then maybe there's a different option you got to look out for, because compromising that prep work is going to give you just a poor end result, I think.
Totally.
I think that's what it should be.
But what is super interesting to me is that process you went through, where you're like, oh, okay, we're going to use AI for the script. Okay, awesome. This turned out really great. We're going to use AI for the voice, for the voice generation. And it was good, but not quite what you wanted. So the lesson here is, you also need to be adaptive and not too rigid, where you're like, you know what? And again, what I love about it was, you're like, you know what? I think it's just cheaper to use Upwork and get a voice actor that way. And I've heard it, and it was really close to actually the AI voice. It was very close, but you're like, nah, it's a little cheaper, and I think it's a little bit better. And then you used AI. So use AI where AI is good, but don't get too stuck in one way. So it's very adaptive, in and out of, like, let's use traditional means. Let's be scrappy, and let's try different things.
Yeah, exactly. And to mention kind of our audience back here, I think around, from what we're seeing, registrations, about half are coming in from more of a small, medium-sized businesses from our attendees. And so I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about how maybe advice or perspective would differ a little bit for a company that maybe is a startup, they're bootstrapped, maybe they're gearing up for doing a Series A funding. What kind of advice would you give, or different perspective?
Yeah. Look, generally speaking, whether you're a micro business or you're a Fortune 500, my advice is begin that experimentation process. Like, you have got to, otherwise you will be disrupted. Just like, as I mentioned, like all those companies who inevitably went out of business, that didn't adapt through any sort of disruption, whether it's the Industrial Revolution or the computing revolution. This AI revolution is going to create winners and losers. Now, the nice thing if you're a small startup is you don't have the baggage of the old way people did it, right? So you can come in and you can say, I'm not going to go hire a blog writer. Like, I'm just not going to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hire a prompt engineer who can, at a fraction of the price, write volumes more content and make it really on point to our industry. So I think you don't inherit the copper wire that the countries who came in afterwards and just went straight to cellular service. Like, there's an opportunity for companies now. The other thing I would say that just as you consider things, don't think about employees. And if you're an employee, don't think about your job the way you've been thinking about it. There's opportunity for massive productivity. So don't think about AI necessarily. I mean, you might want to, of like, hey, what can I get done? I can get an 8-hour day done in like 3.5 hours. What you could also do is you could say, I can get 16 hours of work done in 8 hours. I can become massively more productive and really, frankly, see my career on a crazy trajectory because I've learned to speak the new language. So if you're a startup, if you're an employee, if you're a large enterprise organization, if you're executive, I would say like winners and losers are being made right now. And you can see it in the stock market. Like while you're sitting here, pull up your phone, go look at NVIDIA's stock price in the last 12 months. Go look at Microsoft's stock price in the last 12 months. Go look at Oracle's stock price in the last 12 months. I mean, go look at Adobe's. All of these companies who have really embraced generative AI are getting recognized and getting rewarded in the market. As a startup, as an executive, as an employee, winners and losers are being made right now. And you just got to decide, like, do you want to sit home and watch, reruns of Friends or Seinfeld, or are you going to go push yourself to do something that's new and probably uncomfortable?
Yeah, right. And thing that's coming to me is just be creative, right? If it doesn't seem out of scope, too large of a project, you don't have time, be creative about it. There's so much out there right now with the availability of where AI is at right now. There's no reason that we can't be more creative, use more of the tools that are out there, and get more done at this point. So
one of the big worries is, hey, are jobs going to get, are they going to get destroyed? The answer is yes. Like, in fact, early on, a friend of mine was this is like, I don't know, February of this year, went and asked ChatGPT and said, described what his job is and said, well, he first said, will jobs be removed in the market? And it gave like 2 pages of yes, these are all the jobs that are going to get lost because of you, ChatGPT. What jobs are going to get lost? And it listed them. And he's like, okay, well, because of you, here's what I do. Am I going to lose my job, or is my job going to be replaced? And it was like, yes. And here's all the ways. And then he asked the third question and said, what do I need to do in this role to adapt and become not disrupted? And it actually gave another 2 pages of reasons, like of things he could do to be better. So there will be more jobs made as a result of this disruption in the market than jobs lost. The question is, what side of that bench are you sitting on? Are you sitting on the, I didn't adapt and my job got replaced? Because if I'm sitting here as a blog writer, boy, man, life feels pretty spooky. But if I'm a blog writer who is a master at prompt engineering and knows how to make GPT or BART, again, I use that, but any generative AI, if I become a master of the tool, I have I've got a great future.
Yeah, and as you bring that up, I'm just recalling as we're going through some of the McKinsey and Company surveys, analysis and reports. We have some of those links that are going to be provided afterwards in some of the documents. But I think, boy, there's like over 260 pages that the team went through and consolidated and got an outline of. And it talks about some similar things there that, hey, the jobs, there's going to be some disruption there, but there's going to be so much more opportunity as well. It's not something that you want to plant your feet in the ground and be like, okay, I'm going to stick it out. You want to adapt, you want to keep moving, you want to be creative and follow up, right? So, so we talked a little bit about this too. And it's like, okay, maybe for some people, they're really uncomfortable with it. They don't want to apply AI. They've worked for 10 years in building the perfect process. And now this AI revolution came about last year, and now it's just throwing everything in chaos. Like, okay, we're going to we're going to stick to it. We're not going to follow and get in the bandwagon. So what would we say to owners, senior executives, investors unfamiliar with AI, aware of it, believe in it, but not right now? Don't want to be too early of an adopter. What methods can they use to validate some decisions in implementing the AI product?
Well, I mean, look, I know we're about out of time, but the truth is, you can hire people who get it. First of all, like if it's something you're uncomfortable with, look, there's a whole lot of things my kids love that I'm not quite there yet. So like, I kind of understand that discomfort. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the answer though is bring in people who are experts or who can become experts, who can embrace it. The second thing is learn and talk and learn and learn and learn, and just fiddle and play with things. Like if you haven't purchased, a premium, Bing account or or I guess the premium OpenAI account or used Bard, just while you have a little bit of free time, you're on a plane or whatever, just start playing with stuff. Like don't take it too seriously. Because again, the good news is you're not actually behind it. I think we all kind of I think I'm reasonably versed in this stuff. Not, there's lots of people who know way more than I do, but I even feel a little bit like, man, is there something I'm missing? And the answer is yeah, but everyone's missing something. We're so early in this that I would say, don't worry. Just start trying stuff out and talk to people and talk to your peers, show up at events like this and just start learning stuff. I think, and the other thing people can do is say, look, I'm just going to watch what's happening in the market. I'm going to read articles like, the articles you've mentioned today. Just be very market aware and be really ready to enter. So you may not be a bleeding adopter. You might not even be a leading adopter, but if you're a late majority, that's probably still okay. That just might be your personality, but stay aware of what's happening and be ready to adapt as more established processes and more standard, successes and things start to emerge.
Okay. So as you mentioned, we're coming up close on time here, but I do just want to recap kind of what I took away from your conversation in driving revenue using AI is take it in small steps, pace it out. You don't got to do the whole thing at once, right? So test it in small segments, get everyone involved, get the ideas going now. Don't be afraid to take those first steps. And then as you're going, use that 3-step process, prep it, tune it, interpret the results, and then experiment as you go, right? Anything that you'd add to that?
Yeah. The only other thing is, research a lot. Like Google it. There's a lot of new tools. I mean, as I've talked to people in kind of preparing for this, even, I hadn't looked, I went and spent the summer in Europe with some of my kids. And so it's been a month and a half since I'd really dug in. And then in preparation for this, I went and dug in again. And the number of new plugins and the new tools has grown. Like I'm shocked at how much has happened in like a month and a half, 2 months. And so I would say, go try things out. Things like you described, voice generation. There's a bunch of pretty cool tools out in the market. One I saw that as you do a video, it'll take all of the background out of your video. There's things I've found where it'll generate a PowerPoint for you. There's things like, and a lot of you know about a lot of these, but it'll, plugins in your email that'll, rewrite your email for you. There's plugins that will do almost anything. So just play with these new tools, talk to people. And I think in preparation for this, as you and I were doing this research, we found more than 30 new tools that people probably don't know about that we're going to make the list available also. And I would say, go fiddle with those, go try the free versions of them. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but I don't know that I would necessarily start with the tool, find the problem, and then go find the tool that looks like it could help, address the problem.
Perfect. Great. Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great conversation on AI. Please stay tuned for our next live event presentations that are coming up next. I believe we have another 5 industry leaders speaking on AI. strategies, insights, techniques that they found, as well as 20 plus other presenters that will be released on the top of every hour in 3 separate blocks. Thank you again for your time, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Just jumping in here to thank Dave and Pete for the great insights and real life examples on how to use AI. As a friendly reminder, all the presentations will be available on demand at the AIRevenueSummit.com, so you can catch any sessions that you missed there. The 10 a.m. block is now available, featuring speakers from Revenue.io, VIB, one of our sponsors, Lavender, and many more. To access these sessions, go to the AIRevenueSummit.com. If you have any questions while you are watching, you can start a conversation with the chatbot on the bottom right-hand corner, and we will make sure to pass it on to the speaker. Next up, we have Katie Penner, who is the head of sales development strategy and enablement at Sendoso. She brings to the role over a decade of invaluable sales experience and a proven track record of driving success. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Katie. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Katie Penner, and welcome to Changing the Sales Game with AI and Personalization. Now, before we dive in, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Katie Penner. I am currently the head of sales development strategy and enablement at Sendoso. And my title is a rather fancy way of saying that my main priority is to help not only our internal team with strategy, but I also help our customers' teams implement and adopt a sending strategy to break through the digital noise and to capture the attention of their buyers in the most efficient way possible. So when I help our internal team, especially when it comes to being efficient, it's requiring exploring a lot of various AI tools to help us in being efficient. So I'm excited to chat with you all about that today and share some tools and plays that we've used that have really helped. Now, if you're not familiar with Sendoso, Sendoso is a leading direct mail platform. We essentially make it easy for our customers to send virtually anything to anyone, anywhere in the world, whether that's personalized items, branded merchandise, e-gifts, or virtual experiences. We've got you covered. Now, a little bit about me personally. I currently live in Houston, Texas. I just added a sweet little beagle puppy, Louie, to our family. And I'm a mother to 2 children, Riley, who is 7, and Archie, who just turned 1. When I'm not working, I am either serving on my daughter's PTO board for her school, cooking, or hanging out with my kids and dogs. With that, let's dive into a quick agenda so that you all know what to expect from this session. Now, I do want to preface this session by admitting that I am in no way an AI expert. However, I am constantly trying to educate myself and my team and to become more in tune with current AI trends to ensure that our team is operating as efficiently as possible. So during today's session, I want to cover my view on AI and personalization and where I believe AI can best fit into the revenue process. Then I want to highlight some of our favorite AI tools that we're currently utilizing as a revenue org and share some successes and plays that we've used with each to hopefully inspire you to do the same for your org. Then we'll get into what the future of Sendoso looks like with AI. I personally believe it's more important than ever to drive engineering and revenue alignment. So fully understanding what's going on with your product and how AI is shaping the future. Then we'll get into today's takeaways. And with that, again, thank you so much for joining me today as we discover how to leverage AI to drive more efficient revenue teams and learn about some tactical AI tools and plays that will help you engage prospects on a deeper level, boost conversion rates, and close deals with more confidence. So let's dive in. I first want to share my opinions about the future of AI and how it will affect sales organizations. I'm sure that we've all heard the narrative that AI is going to replace all salespeople. However, human-to-human connection is actually more important than ever. So AI should be leveraged by revenue teams to make their efforts more efficient, not to replace them. That being said, humans that leverage AI will probably end up outperforming those that don't. My good friend, Will Allred, the co-founder of one of my favorite AI tools, Lavender, said, "What does it say about the quality of our work if AI is replacing us?" And it really struck a chord with me. People in AI bring different strengths to the table. AI tools are incredibly accurate and fast, but they aren't empathetic, sensitive, intuitive. And that human to human personalization is actually key to standing out today. A study by Gartner reported on the percentage of customers that expect companies to be well informed about their personalized information during an interaction. That number is 71% for B2C and 86% for B2B. So customers don't just want personalization, they demand it. And while technology plays this significant role in modern sales, it should never overshadow the human element. Using tools like CRM systems, automation, and AI to do things like streamlining processes, gathering insights, and to help us personalize our communication is necessary. However, we have to always remember to infuse a personal touch in our interactions, to balance that efficiency with authentic human connections, to create a more seamless and memorable experience for our prospects, our clients, and our customers. Personalization influences buyer behavior. Marketing leaders cite driving buyer engagement, completed purchases, brand loyalty, and deepening buyer relationships as the top reasons for pursuing personalization. And you may be wondering, does personalization actually have a significant impact? And a study by McKinsey found that companies that excel at personalization generate 40% more revenue from those activities than average players. So, how is our sales org at Sendoso leveraging AI tools to make us way more efficient while also maintaining that human element? The first tool that our SDRs and AEs leverage is Lavender. Lavender is an email assistant that leverages the power of AI to provide things like real-time email scoring, personalization assistance with insights into what type of email your recipient is most likely to respond to, along with ChatGPT and KDAI that help to compose an email with just a few bullet points. My team really loves this to get a starting point email that they can work off of. On the right side of the screen here, you can see example of insights that Lavender provides someone when they look me up. This says that I am a social proof seeker. I am procedural. I am calm. Then at the bottom, it says that I am good and approachable with everyone internally and externally. I prefer to follow rules and procedures. And my motivation stems from the impact that my decisions can have on my organization. So here you can see the do's and don'ts when emailing me. Do talk about refund and cancellation policies. Use phrases like others say or zero risk in, we've seen proof of, and focus your pitch on the impact that you could help me have on my org. Now, with the don'ts, do not use phrases like there might be, we haven't yet, latest technology. Avoid saying anything that sounds like a risky proposition. Don't don the salesperson avatar, be the friendly advisor instead. And let me tell you, these insights are spot on. It's like you are reading my mind. So Lavender has helped our team go from 2 to 3% reply rates all the way up to 18 to 26. And that's dependent on the persona that we're reaching out to. It's also helped us to cut down the time spent on these, manual email outreach significantly. Now, another tool that we're leveraging is Bard AI. Similar to ChatGPT, Bard AI provides detailed information about prospects and their companies using simple prompts. Our AE org at Sendoso loves to use Bard to learn important information about a company from things like their 10K and 10Q reports. This makes it incredibly easy for reps to quickly understand what their prospect sells, who they sell it to, how they sell it, and what their upcoming priorities are, and how Sendoso can help them achieve those goals. Now, here on the screen, you can see some of the prompts that we leverage. Things like, according to company's most recent 10K, what countries and regions are an important focus? Or simply, give me a summary of company's most recent 10Q. Give me examples of recent company advertising campaigns. And Bard spits out a very concise explanation of that information. We provided our team a HighSpot kit that explains how to leverage Bard AI in account planning to help engage in value discussions and recommend solutions designed to meet that specific buyer's needs. We also utilize Gong. And of course, everyone probably knows that Gong records sales calls, but it also provides really great insights so that we can uncover things like pipeline risks and identify winning behaviors. We can do things like highlight deal warnings. Is a buyer ghosting us? Has a deal gone untouched for a certain amount of time? Is this deal only single-threaded? Gong also does a great job of summarizing calls and highlighting keywords, reporting on how many questions were asked by the rep versus the prospect, and tracking next steps. 6sense's intent data has been an absolute game changer for our revenue org. Understanding where buyers are in their journeys allows us to strike while the iron's hot with our prospects and to understand exactly what keywords are triggering their interest so that we can cater our messages to those specific individuals. Our reps know where to focus their time and energy by seeing in real time who is showing intent and who has an interest in buying. My team and I have actually created sequencing that is broken down by things like whether the buyer is above the line or below the line, which, ATL buyers are typically your director and above. They're more concerned about the financial return on their investment. Whereas a below the line, a BTL persona, that director level below, is typically concerned with the features and benefits that your product offers. How are you going to make their lives, their team's lives on a day-to-day basis easier? Then we looked at whether that individual was in a 6sense stage of purchase and decision. We grouped those together, or consideration and awareness. Someone in purchase and decision, it's safe to assume that they are actively researching your company, your competitors. So we needed to do a really good job of differentiation with people in those buying stages. And with those in consideration and awareness, we needed to do a better job of educating. What is a direct mail platform? Why should it matter to them? What results could we help them achieve with gifting? Then finally, we segmented by persona. So for example, sales versus a field marketer, right? Our value prop is different for those personas. And by segmenting our audience in this strategic manner, we were able to deliver automated sequencing that seemed tailored to the recipient. That led to a significant increase in response rates while ensuring that we were able to maintain volume. Now, I want to dive into the future of AI with Sendoso. And I'll harp on this fact, but why is this important to a revenue org? And that alignment between engineering and revenue, I think, is going to only become more and more important as AI takes a more front seat in the way that we do business today. So, one of the really exciting ways that we are going to utilize AI as a company is to automatically generate puns and gift messages that our customers can use for the gifts that they are sending. This is going to help our customers quickly determine the right message to send and tailor it to the recipient. Now, we have tested the effectiveness of including puns in gift messages with all sorts of different personas: high value C suites to individual contributors, marketers versus engineers. And everyone loves a good pun. So, this pun generator will help our customer team save time when creating effective messaging to go along with their gifts. And why should this matter to a revenue org? Because this is a selling point, right? We need to understand how our product is going to make our customers' lives easier so that we can better communicate that throughout the selling process. And in the future, AI is going to be leveraged to provide a more intuitive user experience for our customers, guiding them through the process of selecting, customizing, and even sending gifts on behalf of the customer. Our engineering team is utilizing an OP stack. So that's an AI plus a vector database. For those of you unfamiliar with an OP stack, OpenAI has this huge information database as it's essentially trained with the entire internet. Therefore, when you ask it questions, it has a tendency to hallucinate at times. So adding a vector database with a tool like Pinecone gives AI a memory layer to avoid those hallucinations. And in preparation for this presentation, I had the honor of chatting with one of our brilliant engineers, Chima. As he began to show me a chatbot that he and his team are developing, he showed me a chatbot that another company in the gifting space has. We gave the chatbot a simple prompt: what should I send someone in college? And their chatbot narrowed down to categories that it believed to be relevant, such as education and technology. Of course, any narrowing down of options is helpful. However, as we scrolled through the options, we saw things like educational toys made for children, not exactly for college students. The gifting assistant bot that our team here at Sendoso is building is much more intuitive in comparison. You can give it a prompt like, what's a good gift for my calorie-conscious friend who loves cheesecake? And the bot will suggest a cheesecake sampler so that they can indulge in a portion-controlled manner. But that's not all. You can also give this bot the prompt, send name@company.com, a gift meant for someone who is calorie-conscious and loves cheesecake. Then this gifting assistant bot will find that cheesecake sampler gift, compose the note card for you, and complete the send. It will complete the entire send process for you after being given a simple prompt. This is going to be absolutely game-changing for our prospects and customers. A smart AI tool that they can trust to not only select a highly curated gift, but to also complete the entire send process. It's incredible. So by communicating with our engineering department more regularly, our revenue org is becoming more empowered to speak to the product roadmap and to what customers can expect in the future. This has enabled our revenue team to close more deals with more confidence than ever before. In the future, we can also utilize AI to optimize operations in our SFC, our warehouse. Things like inventory management, shipping logistics, and other operational aspects to ensure timely deliveries and to minimize cost for our customers. We currently utilize AI for things like order waiving, right? Attaching inventory to orders based on shipping timelines. We also utilize it for rate shopping, finding the optimized fulfillment option that gives our clients the best cost, and performing quality audits. But in the future, we can see Sendoso utilizing AI to help route orders to the most optimal fulfillment center based on capacity, time, labor cost, inventory availability, and outbound connections. We can also see using it to track inventory and consumption levels, to generate recommendations on send trigger dates while factoring in shipping methods and costs predicted by AI. And finally, utilizing AI to analyze transactions to prevent things like fraud. As Sendoso looks to expand, AI is going to become this integral part of our fulfillment optimization on behalf of our clients. And ensuring that our revenue org has a deep understanding of what our engineering team is developing with AI is critical to communicating these things effectively. Predictive analytics will also be huge for us. Sendoso will be able to feed historical data to AI so that AI can make recommendations to our customers based on what other companies similar to them are sending, what sends are the most successful for what stages of the sales cycle that their prospect is in, and more. We'll also be able to provide more personalized trend data for individual users that will add a more detailed layer of tracking and understanding success of various direct mail campaigns. Now, with all of that being said, if you walk away with nothing else from this presentation, I'd like you to walk away with this. If you are in sales or sales development, the time to take a deep dive and to learn more about AI is now. Educate yourself, ask your engineering team questions about how AI is currently being leveraged at your company, how they think AI is going to be leveraged in the future, and do things like continuing to learn by attending webinars like this. Like I mentioned earlier, people who leverage AI will begin to outperform those that don't. So make sure that you begin leveraging AI and exploring AI tools and offerings to ensure that you and or your team become more efficient so that you can focus more on things like building relationships with your prospects and customers. So thank you again for your time today. I hope that this was helpful.
Thank you, Katie, for giving us some insights into how Sendoso is currently using AI and what tools are working for you. Next up, we will be joined by John Miller and Billy Bateman. John is a marketing entrepreneur and a thought leader with 25 years of experience in disruptive marketing technology. He is currently the CMO of Demandbase, and he will be joined by our own Billy Bateman, who is the co-founder of Signals, a digital conversation analytics and optimization solution provider. Turning it over to you guys. Thank you.
All right, John, how are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Doing good. Excited to be here for our AI Revenue Summit. Really excited to have you join us. And like Jenny said, if you don't know about John, you must be living under a rock or you're brand new to the space. John, just to give a little background, one of the OGs of digital marketing, was co-founder and CMO at Marketo, and then founder and CEO at Engagio, and now CMO at Demandbase. And if you haven't looked into Demandbase and how it can help you with your ABM and your ABX efforts, go take a look. They've got a great solution for that. So before we get into AI, John, well, let's get right into the AI. We want to talk about how Demandbase is using AI both on your marketing team and then also just in the product as well. So let's start with your team. How has your team been starting to use AI?
Sure. I mean, I think we're doing some interesting things. You know, and frankly, there's a lot of really cool, interesting stuff kind of going on out there.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, I'll start answering this by talking, I've probably learned the most myself about what's happening in AI from Chris Penn.
Okay.
So shout out to everything Chris is writing about, his weekly newsletter. He recently came out with a book, called the Woefully Incomplete Guide to Generative AI in Marketing, or something like that. I definitely encourage folks to go check that book out. And he's got a framework in that book for kind of the 6 main use cases that companies are using AI in marketing. So I kind of figured I'd use that framework here to kind of explain a little bit about what we're doing at Demandbase and also kind of share some other thoughts.
Great. Let's go through it.
And I won't do it in the direct order of how he lists them, but one of the use cases, the one that sort of we all got excited about when we first saw GP2 is true generation. Like literally producing content such as like a LinkedIn post or a blog post or something like that.
Yep.
And I would say the reality is, most of that content is not particularly good. And I think we've all seen that, and with the right prompt engineering, you can make it better. But it's still never going to be super duper great. And so I sort of encourage my team not to use it for that use case very much.
Okay.
The one use case that we've done that other people have also done is sort of comparing, what GPT says about something versus what, the experts say, or what so we have a post like what our customers say versus what GPT says. And that's sort of just playing with this use case of generation, but we don't use a ton of that one.
Okay.
Well, the next couple of use cases we use a lot more. The second one is what Chris calls question answering. And this is sort of using the AI as your brainstorm buddy, your idea generation buddy. So even for preparing for a panel like this, if there's a question asked, obviously I'm going to use my own critical thinking and like think of some ideas, but it's not a terrible idea to go put the question into GPT and, just at least it prompts some thinking and ideas. So again, kind of thinking like a brainstorm buddy, if you will.
Okay.
And, obviously with that use case, you have to sort of watch out for hallucinations. You may not get stuff that's right, but again, kind of for idea generation, it can be pretty useful. The third one that we use the most is summarization.
Okay.
So what I always tell my team, you have to remember, in GPT, the T stands for transformer, not creator. What that means is these tools are actually really, really good at content transformation, taking something that you in one form and turning it into another form. So some examples of things, that we're doing there. Take a webinar transcript that we get off of any of the different tools that are used out there, put that into GPT and have that summarize it into the key findings, and then turn that into a blog post, right? That's not really raw generation because you've given it a ton of content to work with. And the more content you can give it to work with, the better output you're going to ultimately get. I've even run some of the output of that exercise through GPT detectors like ZeroGPT, and it says it's human written because it's not going off of its standard database of the words that tend to be tied together. It's transforming existing content that you've given it.
Interesting. So
go ahead.
You don't mind me just like digging in a little bit. So like, example, you put out a ton of content yourself, John. I wish I could keep up with you, but you write a lot of ebooks and some hard copy books. You could put one of those books in there or a chapter of the book and say, hey, give me a blog post on this rather than like a chapter on a book.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right. I've been using it to draft a lot of my LinkedIn posts. Yeah. Again, never just like, hey, create something from scratch, but hey, here's an article somebody wrote. What are the key insights here? And how would I turn that into something that I want to say on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Other examples of what I would put under this kind of summarization transformation bucket. Here's a press release. Come up with 3 headlines for this press release, or a subject line for an email. Things like that. It can be kind of really effective, which kind of leads us into the fourth use case.
Okay.
Which is, rewriting. And again, we'll use it for this, like, hey, I've just, sometimes if I'm writing a blog post or something, I'll just write crap, excuse my language, like just random ideas, incomplete thoughts, couple bullet points, and then you can say, hey, go clean this up. So that's sort of polishing up draft writing. That can work really, really well. Another example of rewriting that was really fun is we were doing a webinar on May 4th. And the nerds out there will recognize May 4th is also known as Star Wars Day.
Yeah.
May the 4th. So we gave our standard webinar invite, copy that we drafted to GPT and said, hey, make this more fun with Star Wars themes and puns. And it did a really good job on that. Again, because you gave it something to work with, but you had it kind of rewrite something kind of, in a different way. So again, it's pretty similar to the transformation, but a slightly different use case, kind of in the rewriting.
I love it.
And then the last two use cases Chris talks about are, number one, extraction, which is, he'll talk about, hey, I'll give you an example of how I'm using extraction that's not obvious.
Okay.
One of the interview questions I always use is I ask somebody to tell me, when I go speak to their references, what adjectives will I hear? And I find it's a good interview question to kind of get people to talk about their strengths in a way that they're not bragging. They're just saying what other people would say.
Yeah.
Something that I've started doing, which is kind of fun, is before the interview, I'll take all their LinkedIn recommendations.
Okay.
And I'll just copy them, paste that into GPT and said, make me a table of all the adjectives in these recommendations sorted from the most frequent to the least frequent. And instantly I'm getting a table of what are the adjectives people are actually using to describe this person. And I can see how that compares to the adjectives they're saying that they think people use to describe themselves.
Interesting.
So that's an example of extraction.
I'm totally stealing that.
And you could obviously extract things from social media posts about your brand. I don't know what to call a tweet anymore, or other kinds of things that are kind of out there. And this last use case is qualification.
Okay.
Which can be, hey, is this a happy, what is the sentiment of this social post? What are the, he talks about what are the key topics in a podcast episode and so on. We're not using these last two. We don't use as much. In some ways, they're more useful for data analysts than they are for the content creators. But I do think there are interesting use cases around extraction and classification. So the main takeaway here, more than anything else, and this is the number one thing I'd want anybody to learn about how should you use AI in your marketing, is just remember it is a transformer and not a creator. You will get sort of okay content if you ask it to create. You can get really good content if you ask it to transform.
I like it. I've definitely seen when I say, hey, write me something on this, and it's just, like open, kind of write it. Man, sometimes you get those hallucinations where it will say things and I'm like, I know this is blatantly untrue, but it's very confident that it thinks it's right.
I'll throw out two other tips. So one of the things that I do pay for GPT-4 myself. So, that it means I can use plugins, which lets it, for example, go read a PDF or a web page. So one of the things that I did once is I took about 10 or 12 articles that I'd written, and I said, analyze these articles to come up with what my voice, tone, and style looks like. And it came back and like, all right, this is your style and tone. And now, what I did is I just, in that same thread, I could ask it to do this kind of summarization creation for me, but in my style and tone. So a good kind of way to sort of tune the algorithm into speaking more the way you want it to sound. And then just released a couple of weeks ago, in the people who pay for GPT-4 is what they call custom instructions. And this is custom instructions is the ability to tell GPT background about you and how you want it to answer, which again can be a nice way to kind of get it to talk about, in your brand voice or your personal tone of voice.
I love it, man. I love it. So tell me, how do you, let's stick with like your marketing team and the marketing teams of the future a little bit. How do you think this is going to change how teams are set up, structured, roles, different team members? Like, what do you think?
Not to over rely on Chris here, but he's got another line, I think, first off, that's really relevant here, which is that AI probably won't take your job.
Yeah.
But someone who knows how to use AI really well might.
Agreed.
And so that's why I just think it's really super important for every marketer out there to be spending time, learning how to use these tools, experiment, everything. I mean, I just talked about these little ideas and tricks. That just comes with playing with it. Prompt engineering is building a muscle just like any other kind of muscle. So, I think what we'll see is obviously some roles will change. The most dramatic change is going to be in any kind of content creator, whether you're writing written content or creating image content. One of the things that I didn't talk about, is I'll use Midjourney to come up with images, either for featured images for social posts or for keynote presentations. And that's saving time and money that I'm not spending on Shutterstock, but it also means that I don't rely on my design team to necessarily produce every image that's needed.
Yeah.
Arguably that makes them happy because they can work on more strategic, more valuable things. But again, it raises the bar there, you won't get away with being sort of only a good designer or a good writer or an average designer and writer. So obviously the content creators and copywriters need to both be good at using these tools and also good at adding value above and beyond what the tools can do. I think we'll see an evolution in what the data analysts do. I mean, this is something, again, we haven't spent as much time doing, but you could just throw a big data set at GPT, especially with the new code interpreter, and say, hey, find insights for me, and, summarize this, this data set into, analyses. So data analysts are going to need to learn how to use these tools. SEO specialists, social media managers. I think, all these roles are going to be affected. I think the most visionary teams will start creating some new roles as well.
Okay. What roles?
Well, first off, you see this in some growth marketing teams, but, will there be data scientists and AI strategists on the marketing teams? People who are sort of forming centers of excellence around this kind of stuff, who really built some expertise in using data to help marketing teams make better decisions. We're speculating here, but will we see people who are really specialists at helping humans collaborate with AI? Will there be a job on a marketing team that's sort of telling all the other marketers, hey, here's what you can do, and here and how to bridge that gap between what the AI can do and what the human can do, and how do we optimize that human AI collaboration? That's interesting. And then probably the largest, most extreme organizations, we might even see, just like we have data privacy specialists on some marketing teams, we might have like AI ethics specialists on some marketing teams.
I could see that for the big companies.
Yeah. So there'll be some new roles.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a lot of roles that change.
I think there's also, I mean, you kind of alluded to this, but not for the small teams, but more the medium-sized to bigger businesses. Perhaps at least temporarily, I could see a role for somebody just teaching the rest of the team, like how do you use AI? Kind of like an AI trainer, who's like, okay, I know how to do it. My job is just get the rest of you guys empowered to use it.
Yeah. I think I think teams are and should be creating cross-functional AI task forces. You know, that kind of work across the teams to sort of break down the silos and encourage innovation in using this kind of technology.
Okay. All right, man. Well, dude, let's talk a little bit about demand-based. I know you guys have been using AI at some level for a long time in your product.
Yeah.
But what are you guys doing for your customers with AI? Like what's going on right now and where are you going in the future?
Thanks for asking. First off, as you say, AI is not new at Demandbase or frankly, a lot of the go-to-market companies. You know, I mean, companies have been using, well, so the key to remember is machine learning is a type of AI.
Yep.
And, you know, machine learning is any kind of, you know, way that you're sort of using, you know, large data sets to kind of, you know, help something kind of, you know, learn how to, you know, respond the way a human might learn, you know, respond.
Yep.
So we've been using machine learning and AI for years for doing things like scoring leads and then later scoring accounts. You know, Demandbase is known as an intent data provider where we help companies, you know, kind of know which accounts in their target market might be researching topics that are of interest to their business, right? In order to figure out that intent data, we're doing natural language processing on, you know, billions and billions of signals, you know, every single month. That's, you know, that's AI. You know, the way that our ad technology optimizes the bids.
Yeah.
You know, because what we want to make sure that, you know, big companies don't suck up all the bids, all your budget, which can happen because there's just a lot more employees at the big companies.
Yep.
So when we sort of are deciding how to make sure your budget gets spread out nicely, the AI has to ultimately decide, all right, I've already shown impressions to this big company 3 times. Should I not show it this 4th time to hold back some dollars to make sure I have the opportunity to show it to the small company when they come along? Right? That's an interesting AI problem. So the point being is this stuff has been around for a while. I think what's new, really, more than anything else, is the generative AI and all the things that unlocks. So I think what's getting the most excitement in go-to-market tech right now around, I think, generative AI is the possibility of delivering mass personalization at scale. You know, I mean, that's been the holy grail of ABM. But, you know, like, can you actually send, say, a different email to each recipient based on who they are, you know, and what they say, you know, and their background and their context and the history with you and all that kind of stuff. I'll be honest. On one hand, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we're not there today. You know, I mean, I feel like just the email generation itself is kind of a commodity where not only is every sales engagement tool saying, hey, you can use AI to create the emails now, but frankly, my Gmail does that for me now.
Yeah. So does my Outlook does. I start writing you an email and it'll complete my sentence for me. So A, it's a commodity, but B, I have yet to sort of take any of these emails and say, well, that's really good. So maybe we'll get there. In some ways, I'm more excited about the work that we're doing at Demandbase around, you know, the ability to sort of mass personalized advertising. Yeah. And use Stable Diffusion to sort of, you know, create, you know, so that you're seeing a different ad than I'm seeing in a way that sort of, you know, is more scalable for the marketer. Okay. There's a couple other areas where we are using AI that I'm actually really excited about. The first one that I'm probably most excited about is what we call buying group AI. Okay. And, you know, buy groups are a big thing in B2B. I think they are going to be the next big thing. You know, in many ways, demand gen started out being all about the individual lead. And we had lead scoring and MQLs. And we realized that leads are insufficient because, you know, just an interaction from one person doesn't necessarily tell you what's actually happening at the company. So that's why we started doing ABM and account-based marketing, because, you know, it solved that problem. But I think what a lot of companies have learned over the last, you know, 8 or 9 years is that while leads are too narrow, accounts are too broad. There are a lot of people at a company at an account who aren't going to be part of your buying committee. And more importantly, if you sell more than one product, you're going to have different buying groups at that same company.
and the stage of your relationship with each of the buyers groups might be different. Buying group 1 might be a customer, buying group 2 might just be a prospect.
Yep.
And so I think we are going to be moving away from even, not leads, not accounts, but actually to buying groups as sort of the fundamental object that people market to. Serious Decisions and Forrester has been talking about this for like 5 or 6 years now. But the idea hasn't really taken off in practice because it's been too hard for a marketer or a salesperson to actually go and identify the buying groups and the members of the buying group at any individual account. It's just too much data, too much complexity, too much manual work. And so what we're building at Demandbase, Buying Group AI, is actually going to let us use generative AI techniques to actually identify who is the buying committee for each of your various products. And then at each account, who are the specific contacts and people who should be part of that buying committee? And if they're not in your CRM, how can you add them?
That's amazing.
So this is something I'm super excited about. It's coming. The second use case that I want to talk about is how this technology can actually change the user experience of working with the product. HubSpot released ChatSpot a couple months ago with a really cool, sexy demo.
Okay.
And we're building something similar at Demandbase. The idea is today, if you're in Demandbase and you want to go build a list of accounts, you're going to go into your UI and you're going to drag and drop. I want accounts with this revenue in this region, in this territory, with this kind of intent. And you're dragging cards over and setting your Boolean filters, which is very powerful, exciting UI. But with the chat user interface, you can just type or even say, hey, you know what? Give me all the accounts in my territory above $500 million of revenue that are showing intent for my products, but nobody's spoken to in 2 weeks. All right. And just say that and have the AI create that selector for you. Right. That I think is going to be really transformative in terms of not just how people use Demandbase, but how we use every piece of enterprise software.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. That goes along with something I've been using Chat GPT for as well, as just list building accounts. You can say, hey, give me accounts, this area, this industry, and it actually does a really good job of doing that. Not amazing, but it's similar.
I think what's interesting about that is, when you're asking GPT to do that, what data does it have access to?
You don't know.
And it has, maybe their headquarter location, maybe their number of employees. Yeah. And by the way, that data is probably all from 2019 or earlier, because it stopped, learning. And so I think that's actually a great illustration of one of the most important takeaways for how companies are using AI in go-to-market products, which is that the company with the best data is going to deliver the best AI. Yeah. And poor data in is going to lead to poor data out. The reality is these algorithms are somewhat commoditized, right? I mean, we can all just download our own, large language model from Meta, and lo and behold, boom, we've got an LLM, right? And we can get all sorts of really sophisticated machine learning algorithms off the shelf from Amazon. What differentiates the ability to make good decisions, good predictions, good insights, right, is not the algorithm, but it's the quality of the data that is feeding, the algorithms. Yeah. That's why, Demandbase, we invest a ton in our data, our firmographic data, our contact data, our intent data, our technographic data, and why there's this race across all the AI vendors to collect as much data as possible. I even think, I was reading something the other day that, all these vendors, including Demandbase, we've got to figure out how are we going to charge for the AI capabilities, right? Is it just included, or do you pay extra? Khan Academy, to switch out of B2B for a minute, right? Khan Academy provides free math service, tutoring services to people, and that's their mission, to make it free. They've created a GPT-based tutor, right? So that if you ask this chatbot, how do I solve this math problem? It doesn't just give you the answer. It Socratically walks you through how to get to the answer. So you're actually learning. It's super cool stuff,
Yeah.
but it's incredibly expensive for them to run because these LLMs are expensive to run. They actually have to charge for it. You know, and they're working through how do they sort of make that work with their model. Businesses are the same way, right? Demand based, you know, do we charge for this? Do we not charge for this? One of the things that I think will be interesting is that there'll be deals that companies strike with their customers, you know, that effectively, you know, you let me have access to your data and I will give you the AI cheaper or free.
Yeah.
And you sort of saw Zoom do that last week with their new terms of service.
Oh, okay.
Where they sort of are saying, hey, we might use all this stuff that you're, you know, all your calls that you're doing, you know, to feed our AI. That's going to be a trend, I think, is, you know, companies figuring out how to get access to data, because the takeaway here is the best data wins.
I like it, man. We've got 2 minutes before we got to wrap up. What is your one or two pieces of advice, and remind us what the book by Chris, what's it called again? Because I want to go read that. I'm sure other people listening do.
It's something like the woefully incomplete guide to AI in marketing.
Okay. And then we're going to drop that into the comments. We'll go find it. We'll find the link to it on Amazon, drop it in the comments for people. But
Yeah.
what's your,
Right, I just looked up, it's the woefully incomplete book of generative AI.
Okay. Okay. We'll get that in the comments for everybody. What's your one piece of advice for people that have, you know, they haven't even dipped their toe into the AI space yet for marketing, but they want to? What would you tell them? Where do they start?
Sign up for a GPT account.
Okay.
I mean, like literally, I told my team one day at a team meeting, that is literally what I had everybody on my team do. Is like, okay, right now in this team meeting, everybody go sign up.
All right.
Because you just got to, like, it's a learning curve. You just got to play with it to learn it.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you so much, John. We're going to, I know Matt Hines is up next, and we'll just hand it off to Matt. And thank you again, John.
Thank you. Super duper. Looking forward to Matt's presentation. Take care.
Insights on how you're using AI. We are just about to hit 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and a second block of speakers will be released. Some of these speakers will include Gabe Larson, Sarah, Brian, Nadia, Nishit, and Ben, who are all experts in AI. And then up next, we have Matt Hines. Matt has spent more than 15 years in marketing and business development. And Matt is the founder and president of Hines Marketing. So going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Matt.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Jenny, and the entire team. Really excited to be here. Hard to follow up John Miller. Have been following him for years, and the smartest guy in pretty much every room. So excited to hear his thoughts on this, and excited to be able to share with you here as well. I have 30 minutes. I wanted to walk you through. I want to take a step back a little bit. I'm going to share my screen so you can see some slides here. I want to take a step back a little bit and talk about what I think marketing is going to look like in see if I can do this. Here we go. What marketing is going to look like in 2 or 3 years, and how to get ready for it now. As we talk about AI and the impact it's going to have in our businesses, I think it's going to be a sea change tactically, strategically, but it's still a tool. And so how are we as humans, how are we as professionals, how are we artists and craftsmen going to continue to innovate what we do using AI, but also using the opportunities around us? So I've got a few things I want to talk about where I think marketing is going to look like in 3 years. But I want to start with what we've always sort of looked at as the future. Some of you know that this is the Jetsons. The Jetsons was a TV show that started in 1962. If I asked you, I would show a hands or maybe in the comments, like when do you think the Jetsons took place? The show The Jetsons was in the future. It was everybody living in these clouds. It was lots of innovative future things. Just to get to the quick of it, the Jetsons took place 100 years after the show started. It took place in 2062, and George Jetson in that show was 40 years old. So we're not yet at George Jetson time. This isn't like Back to the Future where we were supposed to already have our hoverboards. But George Jetson, ladies and gentlemen, is alive today. He is an infant and he is alive. Sometimes we get visions of the future right. Like this was actually an artist rendering of what the future could look like in 1930. There were no televisions in 1930. The 30s was about radio. The 40s was about the proliferation of television. So the idea that someone conceived of having a telephone where you could see someone in the screen while you're drinking apparently either a shandy or some kind of lemonade, pretty amazing, right? The flying plane in the back, maybe not so much, but this was pretty dead on. This was not. So this is from 1900. They asked people to sort of say what we could be doing. These were balloon-supported people walking on lakes. So just to be clear, this person thought in the year 2000 we would attach balloons to our feet and use those to walk across lakes. So I don't know. There's all kinds of things I think could be wrong with that. But moving on. Like we always like to think about what the future is going to look like. Sometimes we are right. Sometimes we are not right. But here's something interesting about when we think about and look at the future. This is Pascal Finette, and I encourage you to go check him out. He's a great writer about innovation. And he says quite often, he talks about what innovation has happened in the past and what innovation is coming up ahead of us. And he's right when he says the innovation of the past currently appears far flatter. That innovation curve appears flatter than it actually was. And the innovation curve moving forward appears far steeper than it will be. When we look at the past, when you look at what has happened just in the last 10 or 15 years, the things we now take for granted, the power embedded in this little device that we just take for granted that we use on an everyday basis is phenomenal. And when we look into the future, we see what's coming, or we think we see what's coming, and it's scary. I get it. It's scary to think about where this can go. I was at the Marketing AI conference a couple of weeks ago, and a gentleman from University of Pennsylvania was on screen saying, we don't know, maybe robots will try to kill us. It's kind of terrifying if you let yourself spiral into anxiety that way. But the innovation of the future, we will be able to be on top of that. And your opportunity, if we're open and creative and thinking about what that could be, if we're open to new ideas and open to how that might change our world and change our lives, we can be successful. And that's what this is about for me, is saying, okay, in just 3 years, what do we think marketing could look like? And how do we get ready? So I've got a few things I want to walk through. The first is this idea of prioritizing owned versus rented land. If you're frustrated that the algorithms continue to change on LinkedIn, on search, on Twitter or X or whatever we call it, you're right. There's for sure leverage that opportunity, but know that rented land is fleeting. You don't have control of the price. You don't have control of the rules. You don't have control of the algorithms. And I believe the companies that win in the future are going to prioritize their own land. They're going to invest in building that attention over time. This is everything from building your community to starting a podcast to getting to the point where you have your own audience that you can get. I remember starting my podcast a number of years ago, and I don't know, I still don't know exactly who's listening, but figuring, okay, well, I'm publishing these first few episodes and there literally is no audience. And after a few years, I started getting PR pitches. And many of you that have podcasts, you probably do as well. Like I get PR teams pitching their teams to be on that podcast. Like this is what happens over a series of years when you create content, when you create a following for your brand, for your business, for your content. If you think about your business as a media company first, this is where you start to think about, okay, how do I go from being interruptive to being irresistible? How do I create content? How do I create an opportunity that people want to be a part of? Your community opportunity as part of this is significant as well. We kind of stumbled in during the pandemic to this opportunity to create this CMO community. And here we are 3 years later, there's over 2,500 people in this community. Hundreds of people get together on a Friday. It's been a great community to be a part of. And it's when you can build and own and produce that kind of an opportunity and platform for people, like that is an asset. That is an asset that can sit on someone's balance sheet, for crying out loud. It's a huge opportunity and a huge part of who you are when you can earn the ongoing attention of your audience. So think about owned versus rented land moving forward. I also think data is going to be more important than demand. I would say it is already more important than demand in terms of how we think about our programs moving forward. If you are selling into a finite market, you should know who your prospects are. You should have systems in place so that you can understand who those companies are and what are the signals you want to look for. Everything the light touches is a signal, whether it's an intent signal or a buying or a buying signal. What are your customers doing, and how does that help imply when you should be in front of them? No one should be doing direct mail campaigns to your entire list anymore. No longer do we want to send 10,000 direct mail pieces at a time. You should send 10 this week, 12 the week after, 7 the week after that, 46 the week after that, based on things you observe in the market, based on not just the right message, but to the right person at exactly the right time. How are you thinking about using this as a way to build a domino effect for your customers, for your prospects? So you don't have to be in the right place, right time, and luck into that. When you send the 10,000 postcards or 100,000 emails and you get a microscopic response, you happen to get some of those emails in front of the right person at the right time. What if you could increase your precision while decreasing the amount of noise you're creating for your audience? This can be done through your direct campaigns. This can be done through your partner campaigns. Huge opportunity for you to use the data and the increased depth and quality of the data you have to create better connections, better quality campaigns, do more with less. I also think ecosystems and relationships are going to become far more important moving forward. The interactions you have with partners, I think partner campaigns in the past have always been a lot about sort of transactional. Who's got campaigns? We use tools like Reveal and Crossbeam to find our joint prospects, right? Well, what if we, instead of sort of having something where your end customer was the end result and you've got all these people trying to get their attention, what if you think about like who's surrounding that customer today? Like, who are the people that have influence over them? How do you engage that ecosystem and those relationships well before someone's ready to buy? There's a way to integrate this approach with your own land approach as well, and to think about not just those that are transacting with them right now, but who also has their attention. What does that attention imply about the message you should have in front of that audience as well, right? So I'm moving pretty quickly because I wanted to touch on a lot of points here, but think more broadly about your ecosystem. Think about not just referral sales and not just pipeline of immediate deals, but how do you surround your prospect in a value-added way so they see the continuity of the value you can create for them with that partner. I think we're going to see a lot better balance between brand and demand moving forward. And I get that we're in a market right now where people are doing 3 times as much work and generating half the results. And it's really hard to build pipeline in the market we're in right now. You read the headlines and you hear people telling us that we're heading for a soft landing. Tell that to all the people that got laid off in Q1 in tech. Tell that to all the companies that are doing a lot more work and generating fewer results. We're in a ghost recession right now, whether we want to call it that or not. But we're going to get into a place where we're going to have a lot more companies that are spending more money on brand. I really like what Smartsheet has done with Formula One. This is a very strategic opportunity that they have pursued to increase awareness and intent in international markets. They're doing some really cool stuff where they're not putting their logo on the side of the car. In specific strategic markets, they're putting a partner logo. So right there underneath where it says Android, where it would have otherwise said Smartsheet, it says Deadly Science. What is Deadly Science? Well, they put this on the side of the race car during the Australian Grand Prix. Deadly Science is a nonprofit in Australia that's focused on helping increase STEM education among Aboriginal children. So it's helping kids get more STEM, more science and math education. And so there was an awareness and fundraising for that organization that also drove value for Smartsheet, and they've repeated that in various different markets. So it's Smartsheet sponsorship, doing good in the market. There's a PR benefit. There's an awareness benefit. I guarantee you there is a sales benefit and a customer success benefit as well. The CMO of Smartsheet, when they kicked off this campaign, went to the board and said, we will not measure this program on pipeline. We will benefit from this program in pipeline, but we are measuring this based on awareness, based on intent, based on PR values. And so we're going to see more of this moving forward, where not everything is just focused on what kind of pipeline did it generate, because that is a short-term mentality that creates I think a premium on price of what you're able to generate. The more you can invest in brand, in community, in ecosystems, it puts downward pressure on the economics of your pipeline. Over time, your pipeline becomes more efficient as you invest in that owned land as well. We already know that buying committees are complicated today. I think they're going to get way more complicated as more people are involved in the process, as more outside vendors and influences sort of engage with folks. I mean, sort of today, hopefully many of you are already thinking about your enterprise target as all these different people that have to get engaged. in the process. God bless the folks at Gartner for making it seem even more complicated, where we've got all these different like lines and squiggles going all the way all over the place. But it's not just the depth and complexity of the buying committee that we have to worry about here. It's also the nature of what people care about. Here's some research that is literally 5 years old, but it's if anything, it's exacerbated today. We did some research with a company called SnapApp to learn what millennials are looking for. How do millennials operate in the process? And we know from further research since then that millennials and Gen Z employees are increasingly part of the buying committee. What do they care about? Like if you're going to the table and saying we want to give you a demo and show you why our features are better than our competitors or why we have more features than our competitors do, which is what a lot of demos and a lot of sales processes do, product features are at the bottom of this list, my friends. The top 2 things millennials care about when they're choosing a vendor is community involvement and company values. Who are you? What value are you creating for the world? Do your values align with mine? So now, I mean, look, it's B2B. You would imagine people are making logical decisions, but we are still thinking about, we're still making decisions based on emotional cues as well. Brent Adamson does a great job of talking about the identity elements and considerations in buying journeys, right? If someone's going to buy something, what does that purchase say about them? How does that purchase, how does affiliation with your brand impact their identity? It's something you have to think about, especially as the younger folks start to become more and more influential as part of the buying committee. Too often, I think in B2B, we approach things from a campaign standpoint, from a channel standpoint. How well is email working? How well is search working? How well is field marketing working? Your prospects expect this to be on more of an omni-channel approach moving forward. It's not just I'm approaching all these different channels. It's how all the channels we operate work in concert with each other. Yes, this is far more complex to operate than we have before, but your customers expect it. When your prospects are crazy busy, when they don't have time to read your emails, when they aren't paying attention to individual messages, it's hard to sort of get across your message and build continuity and build momentum if it's a different message and a different sequence and a different approach across these different channels. You have to have an omni-channel approach to make this work. It relates to the way we think about the funnel as well. Right? The funnel no longer works just in a linear way. I think a flywheel is a far better way of thinking about how the funnel operates. Right? And even that funnel that we see marketing, sales, customers, like even that's archaic to say that like marketing first, then sales. We don't split that funnel horizontally anymore. If anything, if you're going to use a funnel model like on the right or on the left, you got to split that funnel vertically with a diagonal bent, where marketing may own more of the work at the top and sales may have the majority of the tasks at the bottom, but it is a partnership. And a better way to think about the omni-channel approach that isn't just your marketing channels, isn't just your sales channels, but it's every touch point you have with your customers. It's a flywheel. You have to coordinate that effort. When you have a seamless approach to not only just your engagements in your channels, but your message, you increase velocity and commitment from prospects. It is such a better way of standing out because so few companies do this well today. You can nail this. You will be a step ahead of your competitors for a very long time. We may someday, guys, get to a point where robots sell to robots. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think there's a difference when you think about what AI can accomplish for us between jobs and tasks. There's a lot of tasks that need to get done today that happen manually that we want robots to do. There's a lot of tasks that we have asked that I think about, like sometimes my dad who has passed, he was in marketing and sales for Caterpillar Tractor for a long time. I remember once asking him, like, what was your job before having a computer? Like, I can't imagine doing my job without some kind of a computer, whether it's my laptop or a phone. He says, I was doing the same stuff, but like, I didn't have email. I didn't have rev marks. I had a piece of paper and a red pencil that I would mark up with ad copy. I had a bunch of memos that I had to respond to. We didn't think it was slow because we couldn't send it instantaneously. And there was a bunch of stuff that had to be done manually that today we just take for granted are done virtually, are done by machines, by code, by robots. Even today, I mean, like it's funny. Like I put some of these slides together just a couple months ago, and they already feel a little old. Like the idea that you ever have to write a shitty first draft of anything, like writer's block is extinct now, isn't it? The fact that you have an idea of what you want to get, and like your first job as a writer is just to get something on page that you can edit. Like robots do that for you now. It doesn't mean that writers are going extinct. It means that writers can now focus on what writers do best, which is the idea, the editing, the polishing of the final product. We still need artists and craftsmen to finish this work. Jobs versus tasks is how you want to think about this moving forward. I think the more we can get the robots to do the hard work, to do the deeper work, to dig into data that we couldn't look at before, to identify the trends and have those initial insights that we didn't have before, until robots sell to robots, I still want that insight. I want that hard work done so that I can be human, so that I can come across as human to my prospects. I don't do that by sending the same email to 10,000 people. I do that by having one-on-one conversations separately 10,000 times. AI is going to enable that. It's already enabling components of that today. It's allowing humans to be more human, and that's a very exciting thing to come. All right. There are already plenty of companies I know today that are decreasing their demand gen budget and increasing resources into sales enablement. If you sell into a niche market, we have a client that sells into the pharmaceutical space, and their entire addressable market is 142 companies. Like, they don't need to go own paid search. You know, they can play an SEO game, but like, they know exactly who they need to be selling to. And so the job is not necessarily to go and generate as many leads as possible. The job is to engage your prospects in a relationship and enable your sales team and your partners and your ecosystem to do that as well. I think we need to think differently about just more and more leads, and more about like the engagement we have with the right prospects. How are we generating the right conversations at the right time? Being more efficient doesn't mean we're being more effective. Generating more leads doesn't mean you're being more effective. How do you think about not just the leads generated, but the rules of engagement inside the sales organization? The right message at the right time. If you see one lead from a company and you see a second or third lead coming from a company, how to use that as an accelerator, not a dedupe. There's still tons of companies, maybe some of you on the call today, maybe you have rules set up that you didn't know that you still had, that actually are killing those second and third leads because they're seen as duplicates, when in fact those should be accelerators, right? So thinking about the sales enablement component of doing this well. Another way to think about this is the idea of the messy middle. A lot of companies good at driving demand, good at managing the pipeline, but that messy middle, what happens when a lead is generated? What happens when someone raises their hand or shows an intent signal? When we get better at identifying and reading and communicating intent signals, we have to get far more effective and far more precise at how the leads are followed up on. Hey, I saw that you did something yesterday. Would you like to see a demo? Hey, I saw that you were in our webinar yesterday. Would you like to see our capabilities presentation? And you have to make sure you're measuring and responding to the right thing. Just because someone went to your last 3 webinars doesn't mean that they're qualified. It might mean that they are bored. What are the signals you're looking for? How are you helping your salespeople be effective? The age-old problem in sales has not changed. It's the answer to 2 questions. Who do I talk to next, and what do I talk about? Right? How are you using your signals? How are you using your data? How are you using AI to create better conversations around all that? I actually wrote this morning about the idea that documentation is one of the most important things you can do as a marketer today. I hate process. Let me just be clear. I am not a process guy. I used to think it was draconian. I like to be agile. I like to sort of be creative. I now have learned that process and documentation unlocks creativity and innovation. It allows you to take things that need to be done and you do them consistently. You do them predictably. You can take things that were manual and you can automate them. You can take things that people used to do and have robots do them. The better you can outline the programs that work, the more likely you can create a center of excellence in your organization that is focused on the right things. The more you document how things should work, the more likely those things are going to work, and the more likely you can focus on what really needs help, which is the dirty details. What does our offer look like? What is the conversation that needs to happen? How do you make sure that all of your ideas get vetted the right way and get to execution correctly? How many of you, are banging your head on the wall on a regular basis when a great idea in a brainstorm, once it gets to execution, is not anywhere close to what you wanted it to be or what you thought it should be? A center of excellence helps with that. And as you add complexity to the buying journey, as you add complexity to the way that the buyers buy and your sellers sell, because remember, like we talk often about the buying committee and how the buying committee continues to grow. The selling community is growing as well. Inside your organization, the number of people that are touching new customers, if you're engaging in an ecosystem, it grows as well. So the more you can think about not just sort of centralizing this around you, but creating and investing in a decentralized role where your partners in the ecosystem can talk to each other. If you did this without a center of excellence, if you did this without a documented process, it would be chaos. But if everyone is following the same system, if they are all following the same rules, if they're all engaging in the same playbook, you can offer a more agile, a more flexible program that is decentralized, that allows people to focus on the right work, but do it effectively and consistently over time. There are going to be new rules that don't exist today that we're going to migrate into. Some of this is still, as AI continues to evolve, kind of hard to figure out. Again, like I built this presentation a couple of months ago. I'm not sure prompt engineer is necessarily going to be one of those now. I think where AI might get to the point where AI does and optimizes the prompt engineering for us. But certainly right now we're seeing roles that include not just using AI, but how to ask AI better questions, how to edit what AI produces, how to minimize the amount of hallucination that happens from AI. We're going to see a lot more of that in the next couple of years, let alone 3 years from now. I think we're certainly going to see this ecosystem manager. I don't know. You type in ecosystem manager into Google. This is the picture you get. It's awful. It reminds me of if anyone saw, was it Corporate? What was that Comedy Central show from a couple of years ago? But I think instead of like a partner manager today tends to be very transactional, tends to focus on people that can actually get us leads and share pipeline. I think we're going to have ecosystem managers that are thinking of that broader sort of universe of people that surround the customer. And this will be seen as equivalent to a marketing channel. I think this is going to see a lot more of this. I also think the BDR role is going to be completely turned around. I've heard some people say AI is going to replace the BDR, that all our BDRs are going to be replaced by robots that can have that first conversation. Well, first of all, if you're doing that because the AI-driven BDR is cheaper and faster, that's not the problem to be solved. What that's going to generate is even more phone calls and outreach to these busy prospects that don't like your message and don't have time for listening to you anyway. I think too often we treat the BDR as a coin-operated young person who's having the same conversation over and over again. It's just shoehorning people into appointments. I want the BDR moving forward and expect the BDR to be far more consultative, to be able to have a value-added conversation up front. What if I told the BDR in the first interaction you have with a prospect, you're not allowed to talk about your product or service? What questions are you going to ask? What insights are you going to bring up to help improve that prospect situation? How do you make it so that when you have that BDR conversation, the prospect hangs up the phone at the end and says, wow, that was really good. I would have paid for that. That's the level we expect as buyers. That's the level your buyers are going to want from you moving forward. AI is going to enable more of that because it's going to give you the insights to ask questions, to bring up ideas, to ask questions the prospect hadn't thought about before, but gives them something that you want and challenges their status quo. It'll be significant moving forward. I think traditionally we've thought about the customer journey as linear. It looks something like this. I believe the customer journey moving forward is going to be far more likely an infinite loop, where we think about prospects and customers as maybe that's the binary component, but the way that we engage the ecosystem is going to be significantly different. Imagine a world where the majority of your referrals come from your prospects, not your customers. Imagine a world where over time, your customers, the people at your customer organizations, move on to second, third, fourth different roles. How well today are you tracking that? I bet you most of you, your software, whatever software you're using for contacts, if it sees someone leaves a company, it follows that company and looks where they are next. Well, maybe where they go next is not a company you want to sell to. And in the meantime, who took their job at the last company that was important to you? How well are you managing that inside customer organizations today? I saw a stat recently that said if you can get up to 6 people from a customer organization actively engaged in the buying process, your win rates double. Well, that's kind of a no-dust statement until you look at your own CRM. I'm not talking about how many contacts you have in CRM. I'm talking about how many people are actively involved in that buying process. How many people have you gotten into the buying committee actively talking together to reach consensus together? That's a whole different story. And last, before I wrap up here, I think fundamentals are going to matter more than ever before. We can talk about the role of AI. We can talk about ecosystems. We can talk about the importance of data becoming the coin of the realm and data replacing media as the most important asset for marketers moving forward. But thinking about the fundamentals of predictable pipeline, understanding who your target market is, nailing the message, the right person at the right time, really documenting that sales cycle and the process that your buyers and your sellers go through, making your program a strategy-led, not tool-led program. The technology supports the process, supports the strategy, not the other way around. And then getting better at the way we measure how all of this works. What we're describing here in the last 25 minutes is a far more complex system of operating a go-to-market motion. The tools and the metrics are going to help us implement and understand what's working. But the fundamentals around who you're selling to, what you say to them, and how you operationalize that program is going to matter more than ever before. Those are 12 things I think are already underway in terms of changing what marketing is going to look like in 2026. Boy, if we do this presentation again in 6-8 months, what's different? If we sit here a year from now and say, great, we're a third of the way to that. Are we closer to the Jetsons? Are we closer to bubbles and balloons on our feet walking across the lake? I think it's important to sort of have this view on a regular basis. Constantly change your perspective or say, like, here's what we got to get done right now. Here's what we have to nail. Here's what we got to achieve. And then what does 3 years look like from now? Next year, don't make it a 2-year window. Reset it to another 3-year window and look down the road at what you think might be. Give yourself the opportunity and the time to just imagine what that could look like, to engage in wonder without having to land the plane, without having to think about how do I turn this into pipeline right now. Give your team the opportunity to be creative and continue to brainstorm and think about where could this go. Out of that conversation, you can take the things that feel most relevant and figure out what would that mean for us right now? How does that change what we're doing right now? How could that be a priority next quarter, next year? But with a constant view of where the future is going and what's going to happen in the future, it allows us to be better in the present. It allows us to not be caught flat-footed and do it the right way. I want to thank again the team at Signals for putting this together, for inviting me to be part of this. It's been a pleasure. This is how to get a hold of me. And I'll hand the microphone back to Jenny and the team. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for joining us. Very fun presentation, very engaging, and you managed to pack so much information into those 30 minutes. So thank you again. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye. Before we move on to our next session, reminder that we have 4 different offers for this event. If you are looking to access those, just go to airevenuesummit.com and you can get your copies. We will now be joined by Ryan Staley. Ryan is the founder and current CEO of WhaleBoss. He also aided in founding of Sales Hacker Inc. and Rev Genius. Turning it over to you, Ryan.
What's happening? How we doing? Ready to just dive right into it. So great job by Matt. I got a chance to catch the last kind of piece of it. Looking forward to doing this for you and just kind of rocking and rolling. So ton of information to go through right now. I'm super excited to share with you. It's called the AI multiplier method. So I wanted to give you something that's totally insightful that will probably change the way that you think about what's possible, not only for you, yourself, your family, your life, but at the same time, give you something tactical to walk away that as soon as you walk away from my presentation, you can immediately apply it. So let's get rolling because we got a lot to cover. So I'm going to go through why now, what's possible, the master prompt method that you could use immediately, and then the AI multiplier method, and then what's next in the future. So gonna pack a lot into this 30 minutes. I think you'll be excited. Okay, so for some reason, Jenny, quick question. For some reason, this isn't building out my slides. Is there any way that I could do that so that they build out versus just all the way show up? It's okay if it does not. If it's
I'm sorry, I don't know if we can do that.
Oh, so many great animations. Okay. So anyways, I'll just roll with it because that's the way I roll. So anyways, what we have here is I want to show you why now. So on the left side, you're going to see the risk. On the right side, you're going to see the opportunity. And so effectively, if you look at it, Goldman Sachs predicting 300 million jobs will be lost or degraded by artificial intelligence. Sounds pretty extreme when you look at that. However, it's a reality, right? On top of it too, sales leaders automating 37%. Could see them automating one role. The other stat that I did not include in here is there's another 38% that say that they think they'll be able to automate a role soon. So on top of it, if you look at, the other stats on the right, the opportunity, and this is where I get excited, the top 5% get multiples better and the top 37% get 20 to 40% better. So if you're a top performer or if you're in the top, 37%, there's massive opportunity upside. And I'm still a believer, even if you're just starting off or just getting rolling, you could easily ramp up way faster. in a fraction of the time while augmenting your results as well. So on top of it too, what you're seeing is 3/4 of response expect Gen AI will disrupt their competitors. And then this part in green that's highlighted on the lower right, something really interesting is that, a lot of folks are looking at this as transformational. And this sounds crazy saying this out loud, so please don't spam me in the comments or anything like that. I am monitoring it here, but it's going to be as impactful as basically fire, invention of agriculture, industrial revolution, or the invention of computers. It can have that big of an effect, and I think part of the reason why is because what's happening is there's effectively sometimes 8 years of innovation that's happening in 4 months. So I'm sure you're seeing this. I'm not going to go through the hype train, but there's two ways that we could look at this. We could look at this as a place of fear, or we could look at it as a place of faith, right? And these are real feedback that I've heard from folks of both sides of the coin, right? And so, skills will be obsolete. You'll need to work longer hours to tread water. Law and track record doesn't matter. The job that you love may not exist. And then on the positive side, right, these are new opportunities that you haven't even thought of. You can adapt and still provide value. And then on top of it too, the one at the bottom, I really, really like that my institutional knowledge will be an asset during this transition. So if you have any level of domain expertise across sales, marketing, or any other related fields, like you could massively take advantage of this, because one of the things that the AI models, which I'm going to get into specifics with, struggle with is domain expertise in certain areas. So if you layer that on top of the accelerated ability of them, amazing things could happen. And I'm going to show you some real world examples of that. Okay. And so this is where I'm a little bummed about the formatting, because I was going to build this out. It's going to be super cool in terms of that. But I wanted to give you sorry about that. I wanted to give you a little math equation. And so if we look at the math equation, what you're going to see is effectively the folks on the left are looking at, okay, if we had 8 people, and going back to the original stat by the MIT study, where the top 5% get multiples better and the top 37% get 20 to 40% better, what you're going to see is the top sales reps typically account for 40% of revenue. And just ignore the right side, right? Ignore the right side. The next 3 reps maybe account for another 40% in revenue, and then bottom 4 is 20%. I'm doing sales because it's tactical and it's very, very focused on tangible outcomes, so it's easy to identify. That would break you to 100% of quota, which brings $4 million in revenue. If you look to the right, that's applying the actual tangible uplift that folks are considering or projecting that AI could have on these different roles. So as you can see, when you look at revenue within, by itself, there's a 154% increase. And on top of it too, you're going to be able to turn C players into B players into A, and A players into A+ players. So you're probably thinking, all right, Ryan, how do I actuate this? Right? How do I make this a reality? So, and by the way, if you got comments, pop them in the comments or any feedback. I'm usually pretty good at integrating those into the conversation as we go along if you have comments or questions, but I'm going to try and do my best because we got a lot to cover. All right. So quick breath here. So here's what's possible. And I really wanted to show you this because these are 3 areas that I saw were massive opportunities that reframed entirely what I thought was possible. And so I'm going to walk you through these 3 examples at a high level, and then I'm going to tactically walk you through how to make these a reality for you. Not these exact examples, but other examples. Okay. So we look at example 1, one of the things that I did is I wanted to test AI to see how good it was at something I had deep domain expertise in, right? Something that I worked on over the years and that was within my specialty or in my wheelhouse. So if you look at the first one, like how to sell or market to any C-level executive in less than 2 minutes, what I did is I really, really looked at and asked questions around that domain expertise, and I was blown away by the results. So this was, and I'm going to walk through this one specifically, so I'll show you, I'm not going to go much deeper on this, but it basically broke down decades of experience with answers in a couple minutes if I just asked it the right question. Okay. And that's how crazy it is. Now, if we pop into the middle one of the things that was interesting as well is, I'm going to break down this example, is how to create a day's worth of work in minutes. And so I looked at a more complicated workflow of like, how can I do this if I had a job, like Matt was just talking, job to be done, right? As a sales leader or as a CEO, and how can I put this together? And so I'll walk you through step by step on how to do this. And this third one, which was pretty wild, I took a video from Mr. Beast, layered 3 plugins on for ChatGPT, gave it one command, and effectively what it did is it leveraged skills that I didn't have the capacity to do, like create a guide, video, diagram, and summary with just one statement of expectation. Okay. And so that's where this starts to get really, really powerful. And so I wanted to just frame that up for you, because most of the time when I get asked on like, hey, Ryan, where do I begin? What's the opportunity? A big reason why people don't understand that is because they don't really know what's possible. And so I wanted to share that with you today. All right, next one. And this is the one I'm bummed. This was a cool slide I had that basically got destroyed because I couldn't do the animations. But what you'll see is the slide on the left. This is probably what you're feeling. The slide on the left is like basically an eye chart of companies that effectively are getting, all the funding announcements and all the money that's going into AI, right? And then on social media, what you're seeing is like all the AI tools in that kind of color wheel. And then this is what you kind of feel like. You're just getting tools blasted and dumped onto you. And as a result, to try and like keep up with it, you feel like you're drowning, right? I thought this meme was pretty freaking funny. I don't know if you do as well, but if you do, pop it in the chat. I thought it was awesome. All right. So where to start? Let's go from left to right here. Okay. So there's some really, really cool things. And what I'm trying to show you is like, there's some amazing tools out there. However, there's a massive amount of opportunity that's available to everyone for free to leverage this in the sales or marketing area to grow revenue. And so if you look at the two on the left, we got ChatGPT and then we got Claude 2. Everybody's heard of ChatGPT. Claude 2 is just recently released a couple of weeks ago, that version. And here's what I would say is language and creativity. These are the two best tools that I've seen when working with them in terms of the results they've created. Something really cool about Claude from Anthropic is effectively it's a large language model that has more extensive capabilities than ChatGPT in terms of the volume. Like you could upload massive documents and have it summarized. And then on top of it too, it has some really good in touch areas with emotional feelings of how people like really feel. And the way it described it, I was pretty much blown away. So yeah, I mean, Claude's really good for uploading files. So those are two areas that I see. And then something that I became aware of more recently is Poe.ai. Can you drop in the chat as well if you've used Poe.ai at all? P-O-E, not P-O, Poe. Really, really cool with this one is it's actually almost like a consolidation of ChatGPT and Claude 2. And it's also got chatbots in there that you could either create or leverage that are already in place. And so very hyper, I mean, it's very powerful from that aspect. There's also an iPhone app. And so that's something that I would recommend if you want more of like an aggregator. And then if we're looking for more real-time research, we got these three that I would focus on. Bing, right, by Microsoft, which actually powers ChatGPT. On top of it too, we have Bard, and then we have Perplexity.ai. So Claude and ChatGPT aren't trained as up to recent as these other ones are. You could do real-time capabilities with basically websites and other areas, really good for real-time research. So we're looking at these. This is kind of like how you decide what tool to pick or select. And then if you look at it, the beautiful thing about this entire page is every single one of these tools is free, right? And that's really, really critical because if you look at it, 80 to 85% of the tools that are coming out with AI or Chrome extensions are built on top of these different large language models. All right. So moving forward, let's go through the master prompt method. I want to make sure I'm staying on track. Okay. So this is a little like kind of cheat sheet. You can screenshot it, do whatever you need to do to really, really leverage this in the large language model so you could actuate it for your job, whether it be for you, your team, or your organization. So the way I kind of look at this is these are 5 different tools in the tool belt that you could leverage. However, you don't need to use all of them at the same time, right? So if you look at it context, you could trim that down to identifying a specific person. And this could be someone like Elon Musk. This could be Steve Jobs. This could be whoever you could think of that's very, very well known and has deep expertise in the domain that you're looking to understand. Or you could ask for someone that also has basically the experience level. Okay, so this could be like if you're looking at a chief marketing officer with 30 years experience that specializes in copywriting and demand gen, you could have that be the frame of reference. Then you integrate frameworks. And so it could be like IDA, which is a copywriting framework, MEDDIC, Pareto's principle as well, which is the 80-20 rule. Then you go into the level, right? So that's almost like the learning level. And that could be like a 12-year-old, a newbie, a non-technical person. Size could be number of words and restrictions, emails, paragraphs. And then structure, that could be either tabular format, bullet points, tweets, or executive summary. So the awesome thing about this is you can mix and match this and use it in whatever way, shape, and form that you want. And you'll be blown away by the results, okay? At least I was when I used it, and I think you will be as well. So moving on. So I want to go through what's called the AI multiplier method. And so this gets more into the tactical component right after, the master prompt method. And effectively, what we're looking to do is look at what the capabilities are in terms of how we could leverage AI specifically for the jobs that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So once again, building off the previous speaker, like it's good to do parlor tricks or carnival tricks with AI and have it do amazing things. However, what we're really looking for is like, how do we make this a reality and make our lives better? And so I broke it down into these 5 buckets: time, execution, acumen, money, and skills. And effectively, I broke it down into that TEAMS acronym because of the fact that if you leverage this effectively, you have teams working for you in these areas. Okay. And so I'm going to break down each individual one of these with examples in terms of how to do it, and then you could crush it. No problem. I appreciate the compliment in the chat. Okay. So let's go through time. All right. So there's a micro time, and there's macro. If you look at the top, micro is more something like account research. So this is if you're a sales rep, or even if you're a sales leader, you need to bounce into an opportunity or you have a first appointment. You want it nailed down. That could trim like a 15-minute task into 1 to 2 minutes or 20-minute task. And then macro is something more on the marketing side, which let's use this example, create a content plan, create a LinkedIn post, 10 tweets, and a blog post. Okay, how can we do that in 15 minutes? And here's what I would tell you, and I caution everybody. AI is really good to the point, and the better you get at prompting, the more you could take the results as is. However, if you're not like very seasoned in this, definitely look it over. It'll get you 80 to 90% of the way there, which will massively cut off time. And then, that way there won't be weird mistakes or hallucinations that you'll see in there as well. All right, so let's go through time. Okay, this might be a little harder to see, but I'm going to blow it up. So basically with this is the marketing magic. So if you see the prompt at the top left corner on the top left, it basically identifies really, once again, it's leveraging master prompt method that I mentioned. You're a copywriter, expert in creating content calendars, right? I put a tone of voice in there, snarky, and then create a content calendar for 1 month using long tail keywords, and then have 2 blog posts scheduled for each week. So as you can see on the left side, it built these out. This was designed around promoting live events on LinkedIn. So what you'll see here is it busted out those different examples of what would be ideal blog post titles, okay? And then if you look over on the right, I put, please write a listicle post for LinkedIn with the following titles. So all I did was take title number 1, popped it in, asked it to write a listicle for that, and this is what it created, okay? This is a strong post. The other thing is you could talk to it and ask it to act like your favorite LinkedIn influencer. If you have one, it'd be great if it was someone that would be on this event, or someone whose content you appreciate, right? And then effectively it'll write in their voice or in their style as well. So that's another little trick. So, okay, so now we got the titles. We got effectively an example of a LinkedIn post. And the good thing about it is once you have that prompt in there with the listicle, you can keep popping these titles in, and it'll belt off all these different posts for these titles that you have in your content calendar. All right, next sheet. So continue. Please create a tweet with each bullet point and use emojis where appropriate, right? So here's an example. I think they over-emojied down here when you look at ChatGPT. However, the good thing about it is you can edit and refine it, whether it be ChatGPT, Claude, or any other language model. And then on the last one, what you'll see is this is I'm leveraging the same framework that I did initially, However, it's designed more around the blog post, if you will. Okay, so effectively what this is doing is I took the title and then just had to create an entire blog post from it. All right. So that's that side of it for time. Now we're going to go into execution. All right. And I'm going to run through this real fast. I'm looking at my clock. I want to stay on time. So if we're looking at execution, there's a couple ways that I see execution outside of agents, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Well, we have tool stacking and output command, right? And then we have prompt stacking. So think of tool stacking as kind of what I talked to you about when I took a piece of Mr. Beast content, I created it into my own video, I created it into additional content, and then on top of it, a guide and a summary, right? So one command, you can leverage 3 plugins to do that. There's other ways to string together tools like through Zapier or other integration tools like that. So that's more wide, basically assigning different tools to act for you and then execute, right? The other one, which we're going to go over today because it's much simpler, is prompt stacking. Prompt stacking, I did multiple posts on this. They got 300,000 views in some cases on LinkedIn, but the 20-minute sales org, the 20-minute marketing org, the 20-minute startup. And these are really deep, right? So this is like creating and building more of a complex setup for an organization or a department. And this is just sticking in like one functional area. So the other is multiple areas or tools. This is going, vertically, if you will. So with the sales org, which I'm going to walk you through, is like how to build a sales org in 20 minutes, the comp plan, the KPIs and management, tools on a budget of less than $1,500 a month, and then how to hire a team. Okay, so those are the areas that this consists of. I'm going to switch over. So if you look at, I started with a compensation plan. So as you can see at the top, some really key areas that you focused on, or that I focused on in here, where the number of sales reps that I had on my team, and you could do this with marketing, you could do this product, you could do this ops, it doesn't matter how many people on your team. I have a team budget to add 2.5 million in the next 12 months. And then I asked what kind of compensation plan would best motivate them so that 80% of it hit, right? 80% of it hit. And then basically 125% of our quota was hit. So at least 80% was hit per person, or 80% of the team did. And then of that 125% overall. Okay, so this did a pretty good job, I would say, the first time. And there's some things that I went through, as you see, like it's not perfect. But what I did is at the top, I then asked what KPIs would I set up and track the team for daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly goals in an annual basis for the comp plan above. So you could do the same thing, whether you're talking demand gen, content, whatever. These are areas that take off massive amounts of time quickly. Okay. This one is too, if like you take it to the next phase, one of the things that I realized when I looked at the data is I wasn't really blown away because it wasn't as accurate as I wanted. And so one of the things I did to give it more context, and this is what's awesome about going deep, you don't need to rewrite the entire thing from scratch. You could say, please rewrite it with these additional details. So in this situation, what I did is I'm like, all right, let's assume the sales cycle is 3 months long and the average deal size is $30,000. Our close rate is, I think that's 15%. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see that. But as a result, this is what it spit out. So it was way better the second time once I gave it that additional context. So I'm like, all right, we're rolling. Let's keep going. So as we did that, then what you're going to see is then I broke it down into weekly, monthly management cadence, which busted this out, right? And then if you're looking, I had to basically ask for what tools they would recommend, what kind of tech stack. And then with a budget of $1,500 on the right, with a team of 4, what would you get? And the really cool thing is, as you see with this over the top of it, it basically says that the estimated cost would be $236. So it tried to beat the budget that I had, which was pretty wild. And the recommendations were pretty solid, So this was something that was really cool. And then last but not least, I asked it to hire a performer. Like I wanted to add to the team and I needed a job description. And I'm like, okay, put it in the voice of this company and have it inspiring and integrate the comp plan into it. So once again, I didn't need to keep rewriting this. I just stacked those and went deep on it, which enabled me to kick this out literally when I was on a plane ride and I was trying to effectively see if I could knock this out in 20 minutes. So anyways, that's one of the really, really cool things that you could leverage. Okay. So, and by the way, I had to jump out. So I'm just catching up on the comments right now. I don't have all of them, but I'm keeping up as we kind of go through it. So anyways, I will try to integrate that. Some really good, yeah, interesting, Scott. All right, let's keep rolling. So I want to make sure we hit up on time. We got about 9 minutes left, it looks like. So Acumen's the next one. So this is the one that I tested about, like, okay, how good is this machine at what I actually really know at a deep level? I have over, I think it's 25 years of experience, had every single sales job, grew a business unit from 0 to 30 million with only 4 sales reps. So I'm like, okay, let me ask it like what I know from that experience. It was really good. So if you look at the top left corner, what it does is highlights like, okay, how are my buyers being compensated from a KPI perspective? Because that's one of the key drivers is like, how are they motivated at work? And so I asked that question is like, what are the top, KPIs that this, let's say a CFO, an example, would be compensated at a publicly traded company. Okay. Then I asked, what are their 5 biggest challenges in hitting that role? Okay. And last but not least, I said, okay, what are the emotional challenges that these problems cause? Right. It was really good. Like the verbiage, the copy, it was absolutely amazing. So this is another example of prompt stacking. With this one where I'm using emotions, it might be a good opportunity to test this with Claude too. I did a side-by-side example and I liked the emotional responses that Claude had when it came to this. It was kind of funny because it even tried to give the AI a little personality. It's like, okay, deep gasp. Okay, what are the emotions? What are the challenges? So it's pretty entertaining. All right, so money. Let's shift to money. So we had time, we had execution, we had acumen. Now we're on money. So we're hitting the home stretch here. There's 2 ways. I mentioned there's a couple of ways where you can basically arbitrage your spend on what you're doing. And by leveraging these large language models and incorporating the components that I mentioned, you would probably need to spend hundreds and hundreds, maybe $300, $400, $500 of all these different tools to get that. Now, I'm not saying there aren't really good tools, and I'm going to show you an example of one on the next slide. There's a lot of amazing tools that I use outside of the large language models. However, if you just know the core basics, all these companies are trying to leverage this very fast and basically grow. And so that's effectively what we're trying to do there. So you could leverage that. Scott, I don't know if they're giving away the slides or not. I mean, that's a good sign though. I think that means you like my slides. So I appreciate that, man. So anyways, if we look at it, there's also gonna be a free giveaway I have for you to leverage a lot of this so that you can take advantage as well. Just give me a heads up. Okay, the other side, and I'm not an affiliate for Video AI or anything like that, but basically for repurposing, let's say marketing clips for my podcast, which is called The Scale Up Show, I'll basically do a video interview and then a podcast, and then I'll repurpose the clips. I looked at it and agencies were costing about $600 a month, and I would get the slides back in 48 hours. Now, I looked at a tool like Video AI, I could upload it, get it done in 15 minutes, and then it only costs $50 per month. Okay, so when people say jobs aren't going away, this is where I push back because like I see a lot of solutions that are created that were previously done by agencies, are previously done by entry-level employees or even mid-level employees that required a unique skill set for execution, that there's tools like these. And it's not like the quality sucks on Video AI. It's really, really good. I tested it and it's just as good, if not better than some of the agency. And so that's one of the things I just wanted to call out there of why, if you're watching this, I hope this inspires you for action so that you don't miss your opportunity to level up. Okay. Last but not least is skills. Okay. So if you look at this graphics on the left, that picture, so I stink at graphics, right? I am not a good graphics person at all. I created this visual in 15 minutes in Midjourney, right? 15 minutes is what I did to create this. Okay. I couldn't do that before, right? So what this does is this will give you skills you don't have. You don't want to take the time to learn how to do as long as you find the right kind of cluster of different opportunities. And so what I did is I put examples below each one. If you look at like voice to music or voice to audio, you have this as well, which is really cool. And then even like speech key can create audiobooks from text as well. Take it to video. I mean, you could type in text to video with like Runway, DID, HeyGen, or Synthesia. And the really cool thing is like why anybody can do this is because it's just text to graphics, voice, video. All right. So we are hitting the home stretch, almost done. This is where the future is that I see, because I know there's only a few minutes left. So there's two big areas that I see the future going to that make sense for you to understand what's happening now. So there's agents with automated outcomes. I heard some of the earlier speakers talking about that today. Is like, you don't want to just carpet bomb someone with just tons of agents or basically AI hitting it up, because it's just going to aggravate people, right? So I think, however, there's opportunities where this part of the whole AI puzzle is starting to get refined and figure out for different vertical functions. And this is like Agent Smith from the Matrix. How many people love Agent, the whole Matrix thing? I thought it was pretty cool. So that's one thing. So I would definitely look into how agents are affecting your field, your line of work, what's happening, what's possible there. And then the next one, and this is what really blew me away. This came out a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was a week ago from the time of this presentation, is MetaGPT. And so this is a multi-agent framework. And if you can't see this, I'll try to blow it up for you. I'll just read it. So basically what this did is, it's a open source code where a software company was created, and it basically has a boss. It has a product manager, an architect, a project manager, engineer, and a Q&A, okay? Or QA, I should, quality assurance. So effectively what they did is create an entire department, and all you need to do is type in a couple sentences and give it really minor instructions, and basically it'll create a software product for you. All right. So I'm just like scratching the surface of what's there, but I wanted to like give you as much information as possible in terms of what happened, what's coming down the pipe. And so if you look at this, to wrap things up in summary, I think the future is now. If you want to take advantage of this, you can. It's not too late. If you haven't looked at it, if you haven't started to try and master it, there's exceptional opportunities on the other side of it if you do. Because even Sam Altman from OpenAI said, hey, listen, there's always going to be a need for people to understand the business use cases of how to leverage AI. Okay, so my view is scale yourself, scale your life, and scale your career, and then you will scale your future. Okay, the opportunity is now. Take advantage of it, because I think, like I said, there are going to be winners and losers with this. You might as well be in control of your destiny instead of having your destiny control you, right? And as a special offer at the end, like I said, I'm going to give you, if you want to take advantage of it, there's a website here that I have, one of the deep vertical prompting that has like the entire outputs from 140 C-level cheat codes with prompts, like how to do it. So you don't even have to do the prompts. I did this all for you, but you'll have the prompts there. It's www.aiforrevenue.com/CC. Click on that. You'll get that. I also share these structures on my weekly newsletter called Superhuman Revenue. And then I interview AI founders on the Scale Up Show. So hope you enjoyed this, and let me know. I think that's pretty much it in terms of the slides. It was awesome presenting to you, and hope to see you soon, or hope to see you on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. I am so sorry the animations are not working, but overall, like really great actionable items on how to leverage AI for the jobs that we're currently doing on the day-to-day basis. And we can see what we can do about making those slides available. But thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Great. So we have now reached 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. What that means is we have our final block of speakers that will be released. These will include Daniel, Lauren, Martin, Somya, and Jeff. So go and check it out. It's definitely worthwhile. Up next, we will be joined by Matt Millen, who is the co-founder and president at Reggie.ai. He also held director, vice president, and chief level positions at many notable companies. And he will be joined with Billy Bateman.
Matt,
Billy,
glad to be here at the AI Revenue Summit with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to be here with you and your team.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. We're going to dive into a lot. You guys are doing some really interesting things at Reggie AI with AI, and we want to dive into that a little bit. But Jenny did a great job teeing us up. But for those of you that don't know, Matt is really one of the OGs when it comes to B2B sales. He's been in B2B sales before I was even born. and I'm not that old, but I'm not that young either. And he's been at T-Mobile, Outreach. Now you're El Presidente, or president, however you want to say it. There at Regi.ai, and really excited to get your insights. But first, can you just tell us, maybe if I missed anything that you want to add about yourself, add it in, and then tell us what Regi AI is for those that don't know.
Yeah, happy to string that all together. So first of all, welcome everybody. I started selling back in 1987. So that OG. So that was before corporate email in the internet. My tech stack was a desk phone and a fax machine. But I've had a front row seat to the infusion of technology into the selling process. And one of the things that you start to see is that technology does two things. Thing number one is technology can solve problems. And thing number two is sometimes technology creates problems. When I was leading revenue at Outreach, for the first time in my career, content was a problem for modern salespeople. And what I mean by that, we were getting reliant on sequenced emails, template emails, and at the same time, personalization was going away because of a reliance on templates. And organizations winning and losing, largely reflected their ability to figure out how to sequence. And it used to be a people problem. Somebody inside the organization had to do it. You had to outsource it. And that's when we started thinking, how do we go solve this problem for the modern sales team?
I like it. Okay. So how do we solve that problem?
Yeah, so Regi.ai was born 2.5 years ago. I like to say we were doing AI before AI was cool. We were literally doing AI before you could string a sentence together. So we train and tune our own models, but long and the short of it is this. The first problem that we solved was writing high engaging sequences and cadences using AI and industry best practices to take a process that would take hours or days, compress that to minutes, push that into the sales engagement platform, and allow content teams to provide really great messaging for frontline teams. That was the first problem that we solved. Then customers came to us and said, hey, we got our sequences, our reps need help in the task flow. We've got manual email tasks, we've got LinkedIn touches, we've got calls. So, Regi started generating contextual call scripts at the sequence level. Regi started creating LinkedIn content for in-mails and connection requests. And I think most importantly is we brought personalization to life at scale. And we did that in a couple ways. If you think about, what salespeople are doing in terms of writing a personal email, I've seen this firsthand. Number one, you got to go do a bunch of research on somebody. That takes time. You got to figure out how to find something interesting and relevant and tie that back to why you want to speak to them. And then you got to construct an email out of it. That can take 15 to 25 minutes to get it right. And we can do that in seconds. In fact, I can show you that a little bit later.
Yeah.
In fact, what Regi can do today with our Rapid Writer feature is any manual email task in Outreach or SalesLoft, as that email comes up in your taskbar, Regi's going to recognize your prospect. It'll write a personalized email at the prospect level, utilizing the messaging that's threaded throughout your sequence or cadence. It's going to do that in seconds. You hit send and move on to your next task. So we're revolutionizing the way that sales reps can think about personalizing, think about the way they do tasks. But look, Billy, in the end, none of this matters if reps aren't winning more, driving higher engagement, and quite frankly, driving a better process for the prospects in the process.
Agreed. So tell me, you were using, this was around before ChatGPT blew up. And you're not using ChatGPT like a lot of the AI tools now. They're plugging in, nothing wrong with that, but that's how they work. What do you think are the best ways for, just stepping back from Regi AI, but what are the best ways that sales teams should be using AI? How do they use it to really get the most out of it for them?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that question is to contrast the story to chat, since you brought chat up. And by the way, the chat models aren't tunable, so like, you know, we can generate better output with our fine-tuned models. Now, all that being said, you know, I think there's 4 reasons that you should use a vertically focused product like Reggie instead of a horizontal application layer like a chat.
Okay.
When you show up to chat, chat doesn't know who you are. Chat doesn't know your job. Chat doesn't know your brand voice, your company's guidelines on messaging.
Yeah.
So, you know, the reason some speakers, like the last speaker, talked about like all this prompt engineering and prompt stacking is because every time you use chat, you have to inform it to everything that you need to do. So number one is like you have to prompt engineer. Reggie makes that go away. Reggie, like number one, you don't have to go out to chat. Reggie works with you in your sales engagement platform, in your email inbox. It's with you in LinkedIn and Sales Navigator. So you don't have to go anywhere to use Reggie. Number two is you don't have to tell Reggie what you're doing. Reggie intuitively knows the workflow you're in.
Yeah.
And it's going to provide you with sales ready output. Period. Like there's no prompting.
Yeah.
So if you're doing prospecting, introduction emails, it knows that. It'll provide that. If you're in LinkedIn and doing a certain task, like it knows that. So, you know, Reggie's built into your workflow, and it's because it's vertically oriented. The third, as I mentioned, is you're getting sales ready output, that you can trust. And think of that in 2 dimensions. One dimension is, you know, the admins of the Reggie platform are setting up all of the personalization guidelines, the brand voice, and the message is threaded. So it's not a one-off email. So if this is a manual task inside of a sequence or a cadence, the message is threaded and personalized. It's contextual. And then lastly, what you're not getting in a chat is the managers have no idea what the reps are doing. And Reggie's going to give the managers a full-on dashboard where we can take a look at the rep activity, the quality, the quantity, and all the way down to the impacts.
Okay.
So I think when thinking about how to use AI, like one, I would recommend you use something that is vertically oriented for whatever role you're in, not something that's horizontally layered that needs a bunch of prompting to figure out who you are and what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I like that. I mean, it makes sense to just be like, okay, let's pick a tool that's engineered for the problem we're trying to solve,
Right.
rather than just take a general tool, and then you're going to spend a lot of time, like a lot of our speakers today have shown us. It takes a lot of skill to make that work. It's not just a plug and play. Whereas something that's like, hey, we're going to use AI for this use case, a lot easier for you to just jump in and put your frontline guys on it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, with that, we wanted to dive in and just see a little bit of how it works with Reggie AI. So let's take a look at the product a little bit. And if you just want to walk us through, let's go through a couple of use cases.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And everybody should be looking at my email inbox. Don't laugh at my 28,000 unread messages. I'll respond to everyone on here, though. But what you're seeing is I've addressed an email to Billy, which is no different than we do, whether this is in our engagement platform, whether this is a message to Billy in LinkedIn. And what you'll see is Reggie immediately sees anybody in the to line, anybody in the CC line. So what's most important is Billy shows up. I get to see a lot about Billy, and I'll show you a few dimensions, but right off the bat, I'm getting all this information, his about section, his work history, education, volunteering. And if you think about the way reps personalize, you know, they're looking for clues. They're looking to learn about Billy and get something relevant. So I've got all of this here. I can go deeper. I can look at the organization. I can look at signals. I have direct access to all the social feeds, information on the company, and then depending what you sell, some people want to look at the technographics, some people want to look at who are they hiring as an example, because these are all clues to help me sell better as I'm prospecting. I can look at Billy's LinkedIn feed as an example and see what he's posting about. A lot of hiring and posting. I can go into the company's news, podcast. I can even go into CRM if part of my personalization is going into CRM and looking at past engagements? Am I looking if he's an existing customer for an upsell or cross-sell? What was his last interaction with our support group as an example? So I have access to all of these personalization points. Now, before I jump in and write some amazing personalization in seconds, the other thing that we serve up, because like today, I was on the phone with Billy, or you're making your cold calls, is we want to make sure that we always put our best foot forward on that initial interaction. So we're going to provide communication advice before you make that phone call, before you attend that meeting. So I'm going to get all of these communication inputs on Billy. So some of the key traits on his personality, and then some conversation and communication do's and don'ts. I'm going to get all that ahead of time. And some teams train their reps on DISC personality or ocean profiles. I'm going to get that right here. And this is where you're figuring out, do I tell stories to Billy? Do I just get right to the point? Does he like facts and figures and data? Like, these are all those clues. So as you're interrupting their day, you can be as relevant as possible, the highest chance of creating and maintaining rapport. So pause there for a second, just in case we want to take a breath. But let's do this. Let's actually create some messaging. Now,
Do it.
Now, you see the about section. So I always say selling is like a crime scene. There's clues everywhere, and we just want to slow down. Now, if you weren't using Reggie, I'd have to have your LinkedIn profile open, your company website open. I'd have to go to Google News and any other place to go find, but it's all right here. But if I go show more, I got some really good information here. And at the end, like your love of fishing and hunting.
Oh, yeah.
And then also your volunteering. Now, why is this so important? Well, if I'm going to personalize something to Billy, anyone can talk about the company, anyone can talk about the job. But if I talk to Billy about how he spends his volunteer time or his social time, what he loves to do, I am more likely to stand out in the inbox if I can capitalize on that research. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to click create personalized message. And Reggie's going to walk you through a 3x3 workflow. So we're going to pick like 3 points of relevant information. So I'll take your current role as 1 point. I can speak about your company's about. Let's see what's here. We can do that. And then for third, I'll do custom. So I'll reference Billy's love of hunting as an example. It's personal. And I'm just going to go next. Now, to make this relevant, I want to talk to Billy about better sales messaging. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I can either have Reggie generate an intro line, a rapport bridge, if there's a template that you have your team using. We'll write the whole email. And this is where it gets really powerful. Like, the organization builds out. You've heard all these speakers talk about prompting. All the prompting is done in the background. So we have our default prompt, which knows that I'm prospecting to Billy on an introduction email. I've got a humorous prompt that I prefer to use, but depending on the personality. So I'm going to look for clues on Billy's profile and which prompt to use. I can have one that's got a strong call to action. If I'm doing an inbound workflow, I've got an inbound prompt. So it's just easy for me just to select the one I want to use. I don't do any prompting. I just select what I'm doing. And if that wasn't enough, I can do this in one of 36 different languages. So we have a number of international teams or teams with folks over in EMEA or APAC. So we can do any language. And I'll just go generate. And what Reggie's going to do instantly is write 3 different emails, one based on Billy's current role, one based on the about section of Billy's company, and then one based on his love of hunting. And you can see, and it's got a humorous tone. We can go back and do a more serious tone as well.
Yeah.
But you can see this is his co-founder role right here. And they're all going to have a humorous tint to them. But I'll go ahead and just select this one for a moment and drop it right in. It was that easy. Now, I walked us through, but you can literally do this in 37 seconds, which could take some reps 15 to 25 minutes. So you're thinking about, how do I spend more of my day personalizing more of my messaging? We just showed you that. We just showed you how and by the way, this is the hardest way to do it, Reggie. There's 2 other ways that we make it even easier that we can talk through in a moment. But what's really cool is we can come in, and at any point in time, any rep can always take a look at how great what they're producing is, and Reggie's going to benchmark everything it writes against industry best practices. So you're going to know if you're asking enough questions, are you spending too much time talking about yourself? We found a spam word in here, so depending on how we're using this, the context here, it wouldn't be spam, but it's catching that. And then you'll notice there's no subject line. So we'll just hit a subject line generator, and Reggie's AI is optimized to generate engagement. Billy's not going to recognize Matt Millen as a sender. So all of the weight of the engagement is going to fall upon the subject line as an interrupt, and then the quality and contextual nature of that visible first line. So we're going to do that.
Let me pause you for a second. What I love about this is, I'm not the sales leader, but sales rolls up to me, and man, sales guys, it's easy for them to fall into the trap of spending a lot of time personalizing each email. And I think personalization matters, but there's also, you got to get through it. It's also a numbers game in sales as well. And this lets you still personalize, but it's very quick. Like, you can do this in 2 minutes rather than, sometimes I've seen guys, they spend 2 hours working on one email because they think this is the perfect email,
And not only that, Billy, but then they share it with the team to get validation, and now the whole team's got downtime on that one email.
They're
And
all
that's
distracted.
exactly why we built the
Oh, yeah.
program. So let me do this. Let me just show you like another way to personalize that's even faster. Like, if that wasn't fast enough, at every time that the Chrome extension comes up at the prospect level, you'll see this blue box. That's our Rapid Writer feature. Now, I don't sell to co-founders, so all of my personas are much more sales leader oriented.
Yeah.
But let's just say for a moment that Billy was the head of growth, which is one of the personas I sell to. The minute that the email comes up, Rapid Writer looks at the prospect, matches the prospect, and already writes the emails. And those emails are based on all the rules and the guidelines that your company wants. So the company's going to go in on the back end and say, for sequence or cadenced emails, it's going to tie into the messaging thread. And by the way, we're going to pull the personalization from these data sources in this order. This is the way we're going to structure the email. This way we'll structure the subject line. All done. So if I just go view the emails, Reggie's going to generate those right away, but they're all written the exact way. So look at this. So notice Signals is emphasizing AI and ChatGPT in your upcoming Revenue Summit. Look what it captured right away. Like, this isn't going to get your attention.
Yeah.
And this was automatically generated to you based on what you're talking about socially.
Yeah, this is great.
And I could just drop that one right in. I'll regenerate the subject line, because when I generate a subject line, Reggie reads the email and generates a contextual subject line. And look at that. That's going to stand out in your inbox. This is exactly what you're talking about right now in the email. So I'm going to be able to get your attention and start that engagement. This is what we're designed to do. Help reps win more.
I love it. I love it. So give us some more best practices. If somebody's using Reggie AI and you put your team on it, or an AI tool like this, is it best just to use that rapid email, creating the personas? Like, how do you set your team up for success with this type of AI tool?
That's such a good question. I just got asked yesterday by a prospect, like, what's best? Here's the way I think about it at the highest level. At the highest level, many organizations have SMB teams, mid-market or commercial teams, and enterprise teams. So It's not a one-size-fits-all. And like, the prospect loads are different, the amount of work you're doing. So if you're doing like SMB, where there's like thousands of potential prospects, and you really leverage Rapid Writer. Like, why spend the extra time? You can increase the amount of personalization. And by the way, there's one more level that's even faster we haven't gotten to yet. For your ABM, your account-based selling, for your highest level, do the 3x3. Take a minute, do a little bit of research, be part of the research process, and then do that. So I would say, like, for your enterprise teams or ABM, account-based selling, where you're spending a little bit more time, there's fewer higher level, more important prospects, spend a couple minutes not the 25 minutes or 2 hours, but literally the couple minutes, and use our 3x3 workflow. And then we've got one more feature. So we've got the 3x3 workflow, which, for account-based selling. We've got Rapid Writer, like literally was that quick. It just wrote the emails. You just chose one if that wasn't quick enough.
Yeah.
We also launched Autopilot. What Autopilot does, it does this automatically. It literally will do this automatically. So instead of looking at the 3 emails and selecting one, like Reggie will take every email that goes out as part of that sequence and do this, write a personalized email, thread it into the sequence at the prospect level. And then we're only serving up the task for the rep. So when there's engagement, when there's a signal, we'll serve up the call task, we'll serve up, and we do it dynamically. And the beauty of this, Billy, is this. In the old day, I would put you in a sequence and I would put 200 other people in a sequence, regardless of their engagement, their interest, their intent, their previous activity with my company. And everybody goes through the same 17 steps over 24 days. And your reps are spending as much time on the manual task for somebody that's likely to opt out as they are that someone that's super interested. With our Autopilot feature, what we do is we start pushing personalized content to all of your prospects at the same time. And then the ones that have signals of engagement, interest, or intent, we amplify the activity through tasks for the rep. And the ones that don't, we don't. Like, don't burn out people that aren't ready. So what you find is that your reps now have more qualified engagement with the right prospects at the right time with the right messaging, just like I demonstrated on the messaging, how timely it was. And what this is going to do, it's going to lead to not only higher engagement for your rep, but the other thing that we're seeing is that your prospect sentiment scores are going up because the messaging is more relevant and you're not pummeling the people that don't want to hear from you.
I like it. It makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if we have any questions from anybody, but we still have some time left. Do we have any questions? If there are any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll keep going. But we'd love I'd love to see what other people want to know about this. But one question I had for you is, like, let's take a step back maybe from Reggie AI.
Yep.
And think a little bit about AI in the future of this. This is more of an SDR role that we're looking at, but I think more people are going to a full cycle AE. A lot of companies in the current economic environment realizing, hey, this SDR AE, the economics just don't make sense for smaller deals. I've talked to companies where they're selling $99 a month plans, and they've had SDRs in the past, and I didn't know how it was working then, but the VC money has dried up and they got to get profitable. So they're moving more to a full cycle. This seems like a tool that, if you're putting your reps into more of that full cycle motion, can really help you get the most out of them, or this kind of tool to get the most out of your reps, allow them to leverage technology to replace that SDR role more or less.
By the way, we can stop sharing the screen now so we get a bigger picture of Billy, because he's more fun to look at than my inbox. So we can.
I don't know about that. But what are some other things that you're seeing that outside of Reggie AI, but other tools that you're seeing? Like, you know what, this is making a lot of sense to help revenue teams grow.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing are, like, how are we practically using the technology today? Dialers are in fashion right now. I see a lot of organization invest in, like, some form of power dialing or speed dialing to provide more tasks. I think the phone's back for many organizations. For many organizations, personalization is paramount. Those are the two overarching trends that I'm seeing right now where modern teams are focused. Personalizing as much of the touch points as they can, and providing their team additional superpowers over the phone. I'm seeing that pretty consistently.
I like it. We got a question coming in through the chat. And we got time to hit this one up before we have to hand it off. But it says, what challenges do businesses typically face when trying to integrate an AI tool, and how can they overcome them?
So first of all, really good question. I think I'll answer it slightly more broadly because this is a topic that comes up a lot, which is I think the overall challenge that most sales organizations have in rolling anything out is the change management piece. Like, are you asking your reps to do something different?
Yeah.
And how do we get them to do that? Like, there's so much technology that's just poorly adopted and partly adopted.
Yeah.
And I think this comes back. My advice is this, we recommend doing a POV or a proof of concept with almost every one of our ops to make sure that, number one, we fit into the rep workflow. Number two, the reps will want to use it. Like, do we really make it quick, easy, and fun like we say we do? And then they get the result. And I think just too much technology requires too much change. And it's why we've put so much focus into the user experience. So Reggie, exists where you exist, does what you need it to do, and as automatically as your team needs it to be automatic. So either you're seeing it happen, not seeing it happen, or part of the process. We've literally served up all three varieties based on teams' ability to incorporate new technology despite the impact it makes on the business. So change management always is a consideration in rolling anything out.
I agree on that. We try to do the same thing with our software. We do a lot of, we call them proof of concepts. Let's make sure it works for you. But the marketers, they're always all in on how to use it. And we've had to spend a lot of time figuring out for the sales users of our product, how do we make this easy, light lift for those guys to get the information they need, to engage when they need to as well. And then with G2, I was seeing one of their not a study, but kind of the state of the industry they released. One of the things they mentioned was for small to medium-sized businesses, even more than price, they cared about the ease of implementation and adoption. So, all right, Matt, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing. If you like what you've seen, it's not meant to be a total demo, but we wanted to show you guys some of the products that are out there that you can use as part of this summit. It will change from how we've done things in the past. Go check out Reggie AI. What's the best way for people to engage with you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, awesome. Two things. One, if you do go to www.reggie.ai, you can download it for free. You can use it for free.
Sweet.
There's a free version, a little bit of Reggie every month for free. Please connect with me. I'm Matt Millen on LinkedIn. Love to have the conversation. My favorite thing is to talk shop.
Okay. Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much. And I know we've got James from Flip and Scott from Chronologic up next. I think they're our last live session. So excited to hear from those guys. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
Cheers.
Let me redo those introductions. So we have Scott, who is the Chief of Marketing at Chronologic with skills in marketing management, communication training, budget management, marketing leadership, and more. And he will be joined by James, who is a GTM leader with a marketing and data background. He has a 20+ year track record leading and orchestrating GTM, growth, CX, data, culture, communities, and more. So totally experts. We're going to turn the time over to them, and they're going to take us to the end of this event. Thanks.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hopefully everybody's event has been good so far. What's up, Scott? How are you, man?
Good. How are you doing? I almost wore an orange shirt just like that. I almost feel like I maybe should have worn it now. That it would have been a lot funnier.
The universe was telling you something, right?
Yes, yes.
So I didn't get a chance to be on the whole event, but I'm sure that some of the questions that we were actually planning to answer today might have been covered. So first, let's start by just asking, what questions do you guys have for us to start with? because I'll tell you kind of a little bit of the framework that Scott and I were thinking. Number one, we think that the use and the term AI is generally getting thrown around a lot, and it means something different, and we want to define that in this session. So we want to define the difference between AI and generative AI, help everyone understand that. We also want you guys to understand the difference between an LLM and an ML, which is machine learning, so that you can understand how these play different roles, because every company in the world is claiming that they're AI right now. Every company in the world is changing their .com URLs to .ai, and we're here to set the record straight.
Yep, exactly. So I feel like maybe a little bit less now, but earlier in my career, we were telling people what the cloud was, and discovery calls would literally be based on, what's the cloud again? Can you explain this to me? And it was like, it's actually just our computers, not yours, is as easy as it gets. I feel, just to dumb it down, I feel like AI is kind of on the terms of, it can think and process data faster than you can think and process data, and sometimes smarter, sometimes not. But that's what we're going to dive into a little bit here.
Yeah, I think one of the, in my opinion, so for the record, like, this kind of stuff has actually been around a lot longer than we think it has. It's just the revolution of what's happened with GPT has made things a lot more relevant. But there's actually two use cases that I want to bring up that have actually happened directly on your phones and in your homes. Over the last 10 years, everyone knows what Alexa is, and everyone knows what Siri is. And these are forms of AI. They are absolutely that. And it's infiltrated our homes. So for example, when Scott says, like, it allows you to be able to compute data at a much larger scale than we could as humans, that's absolutely true. So companies will use AI, and almost every company in the world will, to generate large sets of data, to analyze it, even large sets of information, to analyze it and make sense of it at a much easier and faster pace. So for example, if you have an Alexa in your home and you ask Alexa a question, it has an entire knowledge base that it taps into, and that continues to grow and learns over time. And things that are learned over time, that is something that machine learning does, right? Where you don't actually have to feed it information, and it can naturally learn on its own in the data set that you give it. So the more data you give it, the more it will learn.
And the difference between, say, a sophisticated workflow versus AI, where it just knows rules and then can act on its own based on those rules. So for instance, if you, it seems silly now, but a novel idea that we had at my very first job in marketing was with healthcare software. And we thought, what if we suggest they buy these other healthcare coding books if they buy that healthcare coding book? And it was in 2008, the wildest successful campaign that we ever had. And now it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't you just select other products? But with Amazon's catalog, just to go back to Amazon, of millions of products probably at this point, there's no way to build a workflow to tag all those things manually like I was doing back in the day. So now it can understand, all right, these are these types of categories, these are these types of objects, I'm going to suggest these ones, and take into consideration prior purchases. So another thing is we get a reminder from Alexa to buy coffee filters. Like, you have notification. What's notification? You go to the front door thinking it's a package, and she says, hey, I think it's time to buy coffee filters. And at one point, my wife dismissed it the very first time she heard it, and then went to go make coffee, and literally we had 5 left. And we were like, wow, that is pretty amazing. So those are just some real life examples. But in the work world, I think most of us think of the Reggie AI presentation that was just before us. We think of it in terms of generative AI, but there are a lot more forms of it than generative AI and making, a funny version of a political person's headshot or something like that. Those are going around. So there are more uses, and it is more practical in this, B2B sales and marketing setting.
Yeah, one of the most creative use cases that I have seen with just generative AI in general. And this is, by the way, very real. They're actually trying to put this into production right now. But there was a gentleman who created a Mortal Kombat game. If you're not familiar with that game, just do a little Google, but you probably know this. Finish him, right? Anyway, so he created this Mortal Kombat game of all these political and celebrity people. So like Biden, Trump, like Kim Kardashian, John Cena, like you name it, right? They were in this Mortal Kombat game. And you'd think that using generative AI, like couple passes, if anyone's ever used Midjourney, it's fantastic, but you typically have to you really have to massage it as a human being a lot until it gets to the point where you want it, right? And I was absolutely blown away by this game. Like it's gone viral now to the point where they're actually trying to get a game company to create this version of Mortal Kombat because it's so good. And it really was well done. Like they have their own finisher moves. It was fantastic. Go Google it. You'll love that. But that's one of the most creative use cases that I've ever seen in this little revolution, right, that we're having with AI happen when it comes to like visuals and how we can actually use it from a design perspective. It's going to impact all aspects of marketing, for the record. Here you have 2 CMOs, and it absolutely will impact just about every aspect. So you've probably heard people say this, but if you're not using forms of AI to help you be more efficient in your job, you need to. That's the easiest way for people to say that to you, is you need to be using it.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be even a skill set. Like I'm Eloqua Marketo, HubSpot certified, and Salesforce certified, all that. Well, you're going to have some kind of knowledge of how to use AI, because though it will take some of the more mundane work off of your plate, you're still going to have to use it to your advantage. So, think of it in terms of 2 people show up to do a landscaping job. One shows up with a bobcat to dig a hole and plant a few trees, and someone shows up with a shovel. I'm just going to tell the guy with the shovel or the gal with the shovel to go away. It's going to be the same type of thing. You need to be able to be proficient at prompts, be proficient at knowing what's available and what's out there, because it will enable you to not only do more work faster, it will enable you to be better at that work. When I, just to have some humility here, my first director of marketing job, I took it, and you kind of just say you can do everything, but I have these specialties. Well, at the time, I hadn't really done any PR. And the first day, the first email I get is the president goes, "Hey, we're launching a new product. I need you to write a press release for this." And I literally panicked and was like, I've never written a press release before in my life. So I found the competitor that had the closest product announcement of that product and then just rewrote it for us. Well, now you could just have AI write a draft for you, and then you perfect it, and it's probably going to be pretty good or pretty close to what you need to have. And then you could even say optimize this for SEO, so on and so forth. So I wouldn't be afraid of it. I wouldn't think that it's going to take over. I think it's more so going to be a skill set, or is even starting to be a skill set, that the top performers on any team are going to have.
So let's talk about how we can align people around it, because I think that's something big. By the way, did we answer everyone's questions on like what AI is, what generative AI is? For example, maybe we didn't answer what an LLM is, but that's just a large language model. That is what ChatGPT really is a large language model. And then an ML is machine learning. So those are the kind of the big areas that we wanted to just make sure everyone had a clear understanding of. So hopefully that is the case. And unfortunately, I don't know how to engage in the chat. I don't know how to do that.
You can see the questions come across, so we'll have to answer them verbally, which is fine. But I see them coming across.
So Derek, you asked which AI did he use to make that Mortal Kombat game? And I honestly, truthfully don't know. I know he used Midjourney as part of it, but I don't think you can make like a video game. So obviously he probably took the visual aspects of those, used an animator, used developers and things like that, and then that ultimately turned into the game. So But it's pretty cool. There's a bunch of YouTube videos out there with it, so go check it out. So I think one of the big things for me is how to align your teams, right? And for me, so I've got 2 people on my team right now who are incredible writers, right? They're just like probably 2 of the best that I've ever met. And for the last maybe 12 months, even before ChatGPT came out, I've been talking to them about leveraging different types of writing styles and even leveraging tools like Reggie and Lavender and things like that help you kind of like build a structure of your copy. And they've been very reluctant to do it. They haven't wanted to do it for the same reason that many people out there don't want to, right? They're afraid that it's going to lose its human feel. And so how I did this, by the way, if you're a leader out there, I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but this is what worked for me. I gave them a couple of tasks and I said, can you do the following things? We need the following blogs written. So they put together some framework on those blogs, and I did the same thing in ChatGPT. So I gave it some prompts, and then I wrote like 4 blogs before they could write 2. And I just put it in front of them and I said, all right, here's the blogs. I've made 3 different passes at these blogs in ChatGPT. Here's what they look like. They're SEO friendly. Here's the 2 that you wrote, and I want you to compare them, okay? And honestly, the ChatGPT stuff, it needed a lot of human intervention. It needed help with it, right? And they knew that. But I feel like one of the best ways to get your team members to know how to use AI, especially the tools that are out there, is to actually put it in front of them and you yourself try to use it. Because I think way too often, and we know this, like you see all the time on LinkedIn now, 1 million people talking about how to do all the right prompts for ChatGPT. And that's what the gentleman at Reggie AI was alluding to, is like, you don't have to be a prompt wizard to figure this stuff out. But a lot of these new AI tools, you kind of do. And then the only way that you're going to be able to really get to know them, and you can't ask your team to go use these AI tools if you yourself as a leader are not willing to dive deep into it with them.
Yep. And when you talk about how a marketer should use it, I think that there's still a higher level of comfort on using that, because there's time to do stuff, that you have time to edit the copy. You're planning weeks or months in advance, and you can make any corrections you want and produce a lot more. I think because marketing success is directly tied to sales's success, they may be trying to use it on the fly. And I think that that's where some of the risks and guardrails need to be put up a little bit more on how and when and in what form it gets used there. So some sales platforms have used it in terms of they just allow certain drop downs to be used for the prompts to control a little bit more, or maybe you don't yet use it to completely handle a response, but it can give you quick responses to some basic stuff. So I don't know if any of you have watched South Park, but there's a South Park episode where the boys start using ChatGPT to handle all the text messages from their girlfriends. And, you get to days later and it's still pretty controllable. You get to weeks later and all of a sudden they're like, these elaborate stories and trips and things have been planned and conversed about, and they're clueless. They're in basically a lot of hot water. So on the sales side, that can still happen too. So I would say that if you use it more in the controlled way right now. So like Lavender is a great example where it will like tell you where you need to make some corrections. These sentences are too long. You're using these types of phrases. And that's a really good use case to enable a sales team, or if you're making the email scripts or email templates for your sales team, work with them with the tools that you're already perfecting on the marketing side to say, hey, we can do this, we can do that. We should adapt these suggestions to improve results overall, and not just let it completely take over unless there are some maybe unique scenarios in which that can be applied, because you can get into trouble with that. And if you're at a publicly traded company, there's a large computer company that makes computers that's a customer of ours, and we have in our ChronoLogic email builder the OpenAI plugin to be able to make your emails. Well, when we demoed it to her, she started to type in this computer model versus the Apple blah, blah, blah. And it gave an output and a pretty well written short email. And she said, this is amazing. This is better than what I would have written. And she was the VP of sales. And then she followed that immediately by, but I can't use this. And we were like, wait, you don't want us to turn this feature on for you? You just said this is amazing. She goes, I don't know where this information was sourced. I don't know how accurate it is. And there's too many cases in which ChatGPT will make things up to fit an argument. And we could get into a lot of trouble if it prompts something that a junior level rep wouldn't understand if it's accurate, though someone at her level does understand if it's accurate. And so there's some situations that you should still be leery of and not just go full blown all out. I'm on the AI train. Let's go. Let's use it for this and that and this. And then all of a sudden you're in this world where you're having to play firefighter instead of just being more efficient. So I would say kind of adapt it with your teams in a more controlled version and see what works, what doesn't, so you can adjust and pivot quickly.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest part for us as humans is actually defining something that's new and creating it, right? So like putting it on paper. It's one of the hardest things that our brains struggle with. This is why there's writer's block. This is why designers have to like do something different and get their mind off of things to design well. It's the hardest thing, right? It's the first initial idea. And so I always say to people on my team, like, look, why don't you go use ChatGPT to come up with a bunch of ideas, and then you make those ideas your own, right? And it helps get rid of all that, because you can spend hours and hours and hours trying to brainstorm on creative ideas, and ChatGPT can give you some right out of the gates. So that's also a big area that I think it helps make us be more efficient, where we can't compute the data that it has at its fingertips, and it can do it at a much faster pace. So it can give you frameworks and ideas much faster than anything else.
Yep. So that goes to Scott Marker's question here of, I get ChatGPT and the versions of like creating copy, I think there's two things. One, another use case is when AI is used to enhance natural language processing, which is what our platform does at ChronoLogic. We'll read a response from someone if we suggest a meeting time to them, because that's what we do is we schedule meetings. So if they say, Tuesday at 1 works better, it can interpret that, understand it, and then update the invite automatically. Lots of different softwares are using NLPs in the software behind the scenes. But to your point, James, in order to use it in different ways, I think it's using the generative AI in more than just the copywriting sense. So like you said, give me 10 ideas for fun things to do at an event booth, or even better yet, give you a framework. I want to create a customer newsletter for this software that focuses on marketers or IT engineers who face these problems, and make it in this tone with this length, and then it'll give you a whole plan, and you can follow that, adjust it, adapt it. And then if you just keep that string going, you can say, write me the first 25 topics or 24 topics to give you your 6 months worth of weekly newsletters. And then you can take those, adapt them, and then just tell it to write those. And that's where your prompt writing really needs to be honed in, when it actually starts to write them. But giving yourself some frameworks on new projects, ideas, or even to improve something that you already have, use it as a person. Like, what if I were to ask someone who's an expert in something that I'm not an expert in, how do you do this? Or how do you make this better? And it can actually provide you at least a starting point to go down that road. So maybe how you use the ChatGPT or any generative AI, it doesn't matter which one it is really. That is the different versions that it can do, of different versions of how to use it.
I think a use case that I really like right now that I'm actually using it a lot for are building like video story scripts, which take, by the way, a ton of time to do.
Yeah.
And it gives some pretty good ones, like, and really funny ones. I've like taught it about Flip, and it's given us some really good video scripts. Now, I will say I'm not a huge fan of literally any video AI tool right now. Like, I think they all suck. Sorry if there was anybody on here that does that, but they're bad. Okay, so but writing the scripts is pretty good. So Scott, that's another area. I know we only have about 9 minutes left, and one big area that Scott and I felt pretty strongly to talk about was, we mentioned it, but was some of the governance that's happening or doesn't happen, and the ethics that don't happen or do happen with AI. So Scott, if you don't mind, I'm going to start us off. I wrote this down. There's really 4 big areas that I think that we should be talking a lot more about with the challenges of generative AI and the ethical considerations. Okay. One of them is bias. Okay. So this is whatever you train it on, that's what it's going to learn. And that's what it's going to give you as an output. So you have to make sure that you don't have bias in your output. Meaning, like, if you're talking about the love that you have about Flip, meaning we're Flip, then it's going to continue to love about Flip. You have to teach it about the other people out there, right? So you can't have just extreme bias with it. And then the second one is privacy. So our use of PII data and things like that, I think it's going to be governed a lot more than it ever has been. I know from our perspective, we take this very, very seriously at Flip because we can handle PII data, and we do have our own proprietary AI, and we can integrate within ChatGPT. And we do, but the difference is like we have specific governance and ethical things that we put in our contracts on how we're going to handle PII data, so that it is governed in such a way that no one has to worry about their payment information being shared or teaching it, for example, anything like that. Third one, accountability, right? Whoever's responsible when the AI makes a mistake, then who takes accountability for that? So let's say you're using it in a chat bot on your website, right? Shout out to Signals. So let's say you're using it in a chat bot on your website. What happens if it actually feeds a customer the wrong information, gives them a pricing that's wrong or something like that? Who's responsible for that? So there's accountability. And then the fourth one is transparency. Ensuring that AI decisions can be understood by humans. I think that's the biggest thing. And that's why we started off talking about, here's the difference between when somebody says AI and somebody says, generative AI, this is what it means. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the tools out there don't allow for that. Like when you use a LinkedIn Navigator prompt, there's or search, I should say. You can say, is not this, is not that, is not this, does not contain this. Even in reports, you can do that for your data, but there's not a lot of that's incorporated into those tools today. Some of them probably do have them, but that is super important to program the not. So Meredith said modeling to the opposite. That's definitely important. Like the computer manufacturer I talked about, they weren't even willing to give it a shot because of that exact same reason. So, and if you're a smaller company, probably not as big of an issue. If you're a publicly traded company, you better hold on to your seat before you start to use it in mass, because the last thing you want is an email from the legal team because something got reported and you didn't even know about it. So that it's going to be more and more important as these tools start to develop and get baked into these solutions. So even as a solution provider, those are things that we're thinking about as our engineering team enhances that capability.
And as you work with different AI companies, I think the most important thing you can do is ask them explicitly those questions, right? Like, how are you using personal data? How are you training the AI? And how is the information that you're giving it how does it not have bias in it, right? Like, asking these questions to vendors, I think are important. And it is the responsibility of every vendor who cleanses their AI to know the answers. And if they don't know the answers, you need to run far. Because if they don't have the governance figured out, then you're going to be responsible for using it as a tool. So I think that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah. I think that's a solid note to conclude on is, have some caution, know what your situation is, know what type of company you are, and what are the consequences of having it take over and say something that it shouldn't. Make sure you pay attention to that and talk to your teams, not just your marketing team, but other teams if you're a leader and want to use it at scale. Okay.
Any other questions before we end, Jenny? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys answered the one already from Scott, who was asking if you guys knew of any other use cases for ChatGPT outside of written content.
Yeah, that's why we mentioned the video stuff. Like, that's one of my favorite places to use it. I also really like using it in our podcast. Sometimes I don't like keeping our podcast like the same every single episode, so I'll have it like feed me new questions. My team came up with this question of like asking people that were on, like, what if you could get a tattoo of a brand, of any brand, what would it be and why? And so like we've been weaving that in. It helped us come up with like a segment on the show called FMK, where we ask people like, what's sexy, what would you marry in marketing or e-commerce, and what needed to be killed like yesterday. So I think it can also help you draft questions for things that you use in other areas, including research questions, customer questions. So if you have customer calls, I think you can use it to give you prompts and different questions to derive different types of insight and market research as well.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, we are so glad you guys were able to join us today. And thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and let you go.
Bye.
All right, a few reminders before we conclude. All sessions can be watched on demand at airevenuesummit.com. We will also be sending out an ebook with summaries of all the presentations. If you would like to get access to this ebook, make sure you are registered at airevenuesummit.com to be notified when it is released, or keep an eye out for it on our Signals LinkedIn page, because we will also do a post there. We want to thank all of our speakers who have taken the time to prepare their presentations and participate in the event. And a final thank you to our sponsors, VIB, Silicon Slopes, and Signals, for putting this event together. Thank you to all of those who joined us today, and we hope to see you at future events.